Right, so
that's what I was saying.
Also, I got Jim's online, so we're good with Jim too.
Yeah, I can hear now. I had a external microphone plugged in that I don't know how to use, so that was causing the problem. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We've got you. That's the main thing. So we'll be Joby's going to do his presentation. We'll have a Q&A session. Then we'll have a break, and then we come to you, Jim. Does that sound good? Yeah. Eric has just muted somebody.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just so Joby can start the
right. Let's get going.
Brain mastering. And myself.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the large format photography podcast gathering, not in the forest, but it's in December 2020. So welcome those people who have joined us. This will also go out possibly as a podcast. It depends on how visual this gets, because I know that as a keen listener of the Homemade Camera podcast, where they occasionally talk about things that are on the screen, and it's really infuriating when you're actually just driving a car. I know what it can be like for those people listening to a visual podcast. So this may go out that way, may not. So, but either way, it'll be going out onto YouTube. So first of all, I just want to say hello to Eric, who's going to help me co-host this presentation.
Simon, hello.
And you're muted, Eric.
I am not muted.
You're still muted, Eric.
I can hear him.
Yeah, everybody can hear me, but you, Simon.
No, we can see lips moving and with gestures, almost a smile and a beard, but we have no voice. Okay, so we don't have Eric at the moment. We have him in vision at least, but we can't actually hear him.
I could actually hear him.
Okay, yeah. And you will also note. Oh, hold on! I just managed to turn my speaker off. So that's
you can't hear me because you don't want to hear me,
and your camera, we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah. Oh my word. Yeah. So the idea was that I was actually going to be visual on this, but unfortunately I couldn't get my camera to work. So no, you can't see me, which is probably just as well.
It's the eye of Simon. Is what it is.
Exactly. And you may note we don't have Andrew with us. Andrew could not be with us today because he has a romantic meal planned for the evening, and the way that it was sounded, he was on for some sexy time after, if it all goes well. And
we don't speak of these things.
Yeah. So he'll be. Yeah, so he's with us, Julie, and having a lovely time. I hope everything goes as well as you hope, Andrew. Let's head over.
Is this where we play Barry White? No. Okay, moving on. Let's get on. Okay, sorry.
Well, he didn't. He bailed out with 2 days left. I was never going to be kind to him, and he's been abusing my camera. So no, I have no guilt over that one.
It is blaze orange with a custom bellows pattern. It is a work of loud and obnoxious art.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to our first guest, and we have Joby with us today, and Joby has been with us before. He's been on a podcast last year. Joby is also known as Joseph Brunjes, and we had an excellent show with him last year, and there was a couple of things that we wanted to talk more about on that podcast, but we didn't really get the chance, and I guess that we've got an ability to do things a little bit more visually this time, and in particular we wanted to talk about his macro photography work, which is absolutely excellent. There's a photograph that he took of a Rolleiflex camera, which I just love. It just pops up every now and again, and I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's a tintype actually.
Exactly.
It's a type even. So it's like a 30-minute exposure, or you have some really bright lights.
3-minute exposure at f8, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so a super macro photograph, and also Joby has some great. Now I got the wrong. I described this incorrectly before, because I called it forced perspective, but it's actually false perspective, isn't it, Joby?
Yeah, that seems to be the term. I actually had to go look it up because I'd never really put my photography into that, category, but it does fit. It does fit. It's the idea of kind of looking at an object from such a unusual point of view that it gives you a different idea of its shape or size or scale. And that's what I tend to do with shells, but we'll get into that.
So, well, we'll hand over to you now, and you have the ability to present on your screen or just talk into your camera, and it's all yours.
Cool. Well, I tried to, prepare for this the best I could. So I have some prints there behind me that I can actually refocus my lens up here and move back there and show you stuff. And then I have a couple prints that I haven't made. The winter is the time I usually do all my printing. So I have a number of images that are still in negative form and just have been scanned. So I printed a few out on my Epson P800, and the rest I'm just going to show you on screen. So Simon asked me to talk about macro photography today. So macro photography typically is defined as photography that's where you're taking a 1-to-1 ratio photograph of something or greater. So you're making something the size that it actually is in real life on a piece of film or larger. And large format is really useful and fun to do with macro photography, but it has lots of problems too. So there's problems you have to embrace and eases like movements and things where you can really utilize depth of field, which will help quite a bit. So I start off by just kind of figuring out, what do I need to shoot large format photography? Well, unlike 35 millimeter or medium format, you actually can use any lens in your, repertoire, as long as you have enough bellows to be able to extend to twice the focal length. So if you want to calculate macro distances using your bellows, let's say you have a normal lens for 4x5 that's 150 millimeters, you would need 300 millimeters of bellows draw in order to get a 1-to-1 ratio on your ground glass. If you want more than that, like every time you increase by 1 focal length, you increase the magnification. So 2x is 1-to-1, 3x, the 3 times the focal length is 3-to-1, is 2-to-1, and so on. So if we got any math whizzes in here, you can do some math here. So if on 4x5, the widest lens I've used for macro is 90 millimeter. So if my bellows extends to 395 millimeters, I use for 4x5, I shoot either on a Chamonix 8x10 reduced to 4x5 or just my Chamonix 4x5. On my 4x5, my bellows extend to 395 millimeters, which gives me about 4x with the 90 millimeter lens. And then if I put 150 like a normal lens on, it's only 2.5x, something like that. On 8x10 is where it really gets interesting, because what you really need, like I was saying, is you need bellows, you need space to be able to really magnify the objects you're shooting. So on 8x10, when I reduce to 4x5, if I put just a normal lens like a 150 on, I get 4.5x basically magnification at a normal focal length, which is nice because when you start shooting with wide lenses, you start bending things and curving and changing the way things look. So being able to shoot with that much magnification at a fairly normal focal length is nice. I actually do macro on 11x14, which is kind of crazy. And I'll show you some of that in a minute. I have 1100 millimeters of bellows draw on 11x14, and I use a 150 millimeter lens, which gives me 7x on 11x14. And after Christmas, I'm getting reducing back for my 11x14, so I should actually be able to put a 90 millimeter lens on an 11x14, which should give me 12x, which will be really exciting because that'll get you, things at a certain point. My images up to this point haven't really gone that magnified because you start to lose what the object is. Like I kind of like glorifying the object by making it bigger it is, and less trying to obscure it by giving you just a tiny, part of it. So I started off with 4x5 photography, as probably many of you did, with probably the nifty 50 of the 4x5 world, which is the Schneider 90 6.8. Mine's a Linhof, but This thing focuses really close, super sharp. With macro, you don't need a lot of movements. A lot of times you're photographing flatter objects, so you're trying to just get a straight, flat image. But this lens, for what it is really quite amazing. In my early work, I shot with that just on my Chamonix and got some really nice results. And then later I moved to, this guy. This is what I used for 8x10. Actually, I used it across all 3 formats, which is the Schneider 150 Super Simmer XL, which has a huge image circle, but it will cover, oops, where's my focus? It'll cover 11x14 at macro distances. That's also another nice thing about macro photography is you can shoot with lenses that aren't designed for the format, because the further you push your bellows out, the more image circle you're getting on the ground glass, the more covering power, shall we say, that the lens has. And so you can actually use, well, we'll get into that, some of the exotics in a little bit. You can actually use really small lenses and get ridiculous amounts of magnification. And the reason why is if a lens, let's say like a normal lens, is rated for its best optimum performance at like a 1:6 ratio or something like that. I'm sorry, yeah, 1:6, where your object is going to be larger than what you're putting on a piece of film. If you flip the lens, you can actually remove elements and flip them around. Then you can get the opposite. You can get a 6:1 ratio that's also optimized for that lens. So some lenses, you can actually take the elements and reverse them and get more of a macro. You've heard of people using in 35mm, take a 50mm lens and flipping it around and adapting it. It's the same sort of idea. Simon's favorite lenses, Tessars, are really good for that.
I've got to say, Joby, that's and I don't mind Tessars on large format, fortunately. But that's there are so many things where when you're experienced in the smaller formats, and I've known about reversing lenses for forever, and it's never ever occurred to me that you can just, and it's a really easy thing to do, to just reverse a large format lens to do the same kind of thing. But and it is the case, obviously, that I say obviously, I assume it's still the case that a shorter focal length will give you more magnification when you've reversed it than a longer lens.
Yes.
Although they're not all reversible, because not all of the shutters have the same mounting flange size on the front and back. There's a couple of them where I think it's the Copal 1 has a different size on the front and the back, whereas like the Copal 0 and the 2 had the same size threads, because I was using one of those shutters for a handmade lens, and much to my intense annoyance, the piece that I bought from RAF Camera to thread it into the front didn't work on the back. And I was like, you're kidding me. So you have to be a little bit careful depending on the lens. Is
that more to do with the lens board, though? If you've got some kind of weird lens board?
No, this has to do with threading the actual optical elements into the shutter itself.
Some normal lenses have symmetrical elements so that when you flip them, it really doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. Some have asymmetrical elements, like you see, the front of my 150 and the back are really, dramatically different in size. That would make more. Sometimes this won't even fit in my format. It won't even go in the hole. So for flipping stuff like that. But flipping normal lenses, people use enlarger lenses.
I was going to ask about that. Enlarger lenses are pretty popular.
There's the idea. Well, this is designed to enlarge a piece of 24x36mm film into something like 8x10. If I flip it, then I can do the opposite. I can take something that's 24x36mm and make it 8x10 size. So lenses work both ways, which is kind of nice. Right. But again, you got to adapt it. There's a lot of if you're going to go into exotic stuff like this, you have to be a creative who's willing to figure out how to get that on a lens board, how to get that on.
There's sort of a whole cottage industry around macro lens mounting and stuff.
Yeah, and but not so much in large format. I mean, it's the digital world in this sense has taken over macro, and probably with good reason, because they have something called focus stacking, You know, and you can focus stack with large format film if you've got the cash, you know, to shoot like 8 sheets of film and scan them all and then focus stack. I'd rather print it in the darkroom. So you kind of have to choose your subjects based on your format. I mean, it's, you know, we get into large format not because it's easier. We do it because it presents challenges, and it's fun to try to overcome those challenges or be creative and work around them.
It's not easier? What?
Well, the good news is there actually are large format macro lenses. Mm-hmm. The two last ones that were in production really are Rodenstock and Schneider both made one. Rodenstock's called Macro Cyrenar, and there are couple focal lengths. Schneider made one that was the Macro Semar. I think the Schneiders had shorter focal lengths, so they were a little bit easier to work with. I think the Rodenstocks were like over 200 millimeters for one of them, and then I think their last one they made was, I think, 180 millimeters. Okay. Now, we start to enter problems when we start talking about these lenses. Let me finish kind of a list of lenses, and then we'll get to technique as far as how to deal with all this. So there are other lenses that will work in the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 kind of range, and those are process lenses or repro lenses, and those would be lenses like your red dot Artars, your Ronars, your Apo Nikkor lenses like these, these big monster things, something like that. This was a 610. So I don't even have I don't have 1200 millimeters of Bellows draw on my 11x14, so I'm not sure why I own this lens. But anyway, just because it was on sale, I guess.
Because you could.
Because I could. Well,
there is nothing wrong with owning lenses that you cannot use.
I've done that.
I can do it. I just can't shoot 1-to-1. I mean, I just can't shoot 1-to-1. So I've shot portraits with it, and it looks pretty amazing having that much. The depth of field on that is pretty crazy. Okay, so then there's also some exotic things like Bausch & Lomb made some micro tessars. There are Zeiss made some macro lenses called luminars. Those I've seen a couple of those on eBay. They come with their own cone, so they have a cone that already kind of pushes them out. This is another thing you can do if you're fancy with the 3D printing world. Let's say you don't have enough Bellows draw. Well, you 3D print yourself a cone and put your lens on the end of it, and you've extended your lens another 150 millimeters or 300 millimeters or whatever you want. If you want to get really crazy, then there's microfilm readers. They're lenses they're used for reading microfilm, which you can flip. There's also 35 millimeter lenses. I think we talked about the enlarging lenses. You can use, if you want to get really crazy, you can use Cine 16 millimeter lenses. So like a 25 millimeter normal lens on a 16 millimeter camera can actually be used in large format macro work. Now, the distance between your subject and the lens, it starts getting so close that lighting an object with a lens that small, gets very challenging, because anybody that's tried to do macro work, the lens at some point starts getting in the way of your lighting. And a lot of subjects, like when they do microscope work and stuff, they're backlighting an object and something that's luminous that they're shining through, like leaves and stuff on slides and things like that. So how do you light stuff? Well, the two options obviously are strobe versus constant lighting, right? Strobes are great if you have the power. And I say, well, you have the power because something, when you're ramming your bellows out to their maximum, you run into something called Bellows Factor, right? When something we worry about a little bit when we're shooting normally, but in macro, it makes a huge difference, because let's say I'm using my 4x5 camera with a 90 millimeter lens. Let's see who can get the math on this first. I have a 395 millimeter Bellows draw with a 90 millimeter lens. How many stops of light do I have to add? Or should I go through the formula before everybody wants to do the math?
I just realized I was shouting the answer. There's probably quite a few people there, but we're all on mute. I'm just going to throw a guess in there at around about 4.
Alex Morrison said 3.5. I'm removing the question mark. Alex, you said 3.5. Have confidence. I got you.
Hang on, I got to redo my math because it doesn't look right. 3.5.
I, by the way, am terrible at math.
6 3/4 stops.
Oh,
Yeah, that's crazy, right? That's not the worst one, though. It gets worse. So the reason why is that when you have a 150 millimeter lens, that means when your lens is at 150 millimeters bellows draw, that's infinity, right? And as you start zooming, getting closer to a subject, or focusing on something that's closer to your camera, you are extending the bellows out towards that subject and reducing the amount of light that comes in. So every half, well, you can think of this and break this down to however you want, but every extra focal length of the lens, you add 2 stops, or every half the focal length of the lens, you add a stop of light. So if my 150 millimeter lens is at 300 millimeters bellows draw, that's 2 stops. Does that make sense to everybody? So if I have my 11 by 14 with a 1,100 millimeters of bellows draw and my 150 sitting on it, 150 millimeter lens sitting on it, how many stops of light is that?
Sorry, what was the length?
So the 150 millimeter lens with 1,100 millimeters of bellows draw.
So reciprocity calculator says 5 2/3.
Nope. 12 2/3. So you take the 11. The way I do that math really fast, kind of in my head, is you take the length of the bellows, which is 1,100, and you subtract the focal length of the lens, which is 150, which gives me 950, and then I divide it by half of the focal length, which is 75, which gives me 12 2/3 stops.
Got it. I didn't deduct the 150 from the 1100 in the first place. So I had an extra 2 stops. I had an extra 2 stops in there no matter what.
And that gets me in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, we haven't gotten into reciprocity yet. This is just how much light's coming into your camera. Reciprocity is next on the list. So for lighting, strobe is really nice if you have the power. If you don't have the power to cover that much, then you have to go to constant lights. And continuous lighting, and continuous lighting comes in so many forms. Now, the good news about continuous lighting is we all know the closer your light source is to your subject, the more light it produces, the more light comes in. So if you have a very small light, like say a flashlight, or even, sorry, I should have had this ready to go.
No, your mic is good. We can hear you rummaging around in the darkroom. It's great.
You can make pretty simple macro setups with not very much money, just with stuff you got around the house. If you go and just buy yourself a little LED lamp light like this, and you can put it on its side, and shine into what you're photographing. I've shot a lot of 4x5 stuff just with this thing, just really close. Or you have 2, one on either side.
That's really cool, because you could also get one of those an IKEA I think it's called Jansko or Jansjo or something like that, which means that you could then when you're not doing extreme macro photography, you could then set up your radioactive lenses like a super Takuma that you've got there, and de-yellow it. Yeah, that'd be
then
good
I would
use for
lose that natural yellow filter when I'm shooting black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, so I'm listing all this expensive stuff, but really you can shoot macro on a budget pretty easily. When you see kind of the shells that I've shot, I've shot them really with not much extra stuff.
To play off of a question that just popped up in the chat, when you're working with that, how are you metering? Are you putting a light metering down, spot metering on the glass? Like I'm using
a light meter, handheld light meter, like a a studio meter. If I'm using a flash, I use something like this that will trigger the flash. This is a Saconic L758DR or something. It's one of the older ones, but it still does everything. So it's yeah, I do this if I'm doing continuous light. Still just kind of stick this down. I mean, and that's the problem when you're using a short lens like that 90 on 4x5 is I would end up. I had like a setup of shells that was really complicated, and I forgot and like touched them with my light meter and knocked them over and stuff. So the metering is difficult, but it's easy. Now what I do is I figure out what the Bellows factor is, and I just set my ISO to that, so I don't have to do any extra math in my head. Like if I have ISO 400 film and I need to reduce it a couple stops, then I just set my ISO to 50 or to 25 or whatever it needs to be. This one will go down to ISO 6. So I take it down as far as I can go so that I don't have to think about anything extra at that point. It's all ready to go. Because I have to remember to put it back before I meter something else in normal size. But that's generally.
And like for the exposures for folks who have like handheld strobes or whatever, is it possible? These are fun questions to answer. Is it possible to take and like pop the strobe multiple times and essentially essentially stack the light exposure up? Yeah,
you can do that. You can do that. Just know that every time you're popping the shutter, you're slightly shaking the camera. I mean, you have to have a cable release that's. I try not to let the cable release be straight. I let it have a curve in it, or you can use one of those.
But what if you leave the shutter open and just pop the strobe multiple times?
Oh yeah, you can do that. In fact, that's if you want to shoot with a barrel lens, something like just a lens that has no shutter, something like that. Like this is a Xenar, a 210 Xenar. I've done a lot of that stuff where you just open the lens, pop it a bunch of times, and take it off.
Okay.
The continuous lighting obviously is a little bit less stressful because you just time it and walk away and come back. But like I do this stuff in my basement where I'm on a cement floor where nothing shakes. If I was up on my first floor, my daughter's running around or dogs, something's shaking or something's making noise or stuff, then you have to worry about vibrations. And that's the other thing is when you have to imagine when you're choosing a camera to do this, if you're using a field camera, you want to make sure that when your bellows are that far out that it's not too rickety.
Yeah. Do you ever have to put a second support up underneath the lens?
I've done that. The other thing that we haven't talked about yet is that when you get close to 1-to-1 magnification, if you have a camera that has like a field camera, my Chamonix has a screw drive that moves the front standard forward and back. When you get close to 1-to-1, it no longer focuses, it only magnifies. So you have to actually use your rear standard to focus. Or what I do is I have my subject on a rolling table, so I can actually slightly pull the subject forward and back. Or if you're shooting down, you can have like a little, they call them lab jacks, like there's a tiny little pneumatic jack that you can raise and lower your subject on to get it in focus, because once you get to that 1-to-1 ratio, moving the front standard just changes the magnification but not the focus. It's kind of weird, it drove me crazy the first time I did it, but you'll figure it out when you try that and you go, why isn't it getting focus? But if you just move, you either move the camera forward or back or the subject forward and back. What I do is in my darkroom studio is that I'm using an RK studio stand that has wheels. So I can put it's incredibly stable too. It'll hold like a truck. So, the most I put on it is my 30-pound 11x14. And it just sits there. It doesn't go anywhere. So the only thing I have to do if I'm really way out is prop the bellows with another tripod or something. But I'm using such wide lenses on those when I have it that far out. It's not like I'm putting that 10-pound cook over there with the bellows all the way out. I would have to prop that up, but otherwise, the rest of it. Now, when you get to those magnifications, we also have the problem of depth of field, right? There's not going to be a lot in focus when you have the bellows jacked out like that. So what do? You're jamming your aperture all the way to the right, f45, f60, f128, whatever. And people have to worry about the D word. What's the dreaded D word? Diffraction, right?
Right.
But for me, for at least 8x10 and up, like 8x10, 11x14, I don't worry about diffraction very much. Diffraction varies depending on the format that you're shooting. So with 35 millimeter, you have to worry about diffraction a lot because the format is so small. But as you get bigger and bigger, like 8x10, f45, no big deal. People worry about like, and 4x5 above f22, people start to get worried. But I'm not enlarging that much. I'm enlarging at most to 16x20, and I don't see a big problem. And with 11x14, I'm contact printing, so I don't worry at all about diffraction. I mean,
I mentioned that I'm one of those people that was getting a little bit concerned about going past f22, and then I got roundly criticised for even thinking that f22 would be an issue on 4x5. So I'm sure it's absolutely fine.
Well, I routinely shoot at 32, 45, no problem. Let's see, what have I left out? Oh, now if you need more depth of field, this is sort of a cheat. Especially if you're printing in a darkroom, is you can always print smaller. I mean, you can always make the image smaller on your piece of film and then enlarge it later. If you're going to enlarge in the darkroom and you have a enlarger with a really tall column, then you can, if you're trying to get enough depth of field and can't quite get it, then you just make the image a little bit smaller on your ground glass and make it smaller on the negative. And then when you get the negative developed, when you print, you just make the enlargement bigger. And you can get a little more depth of field that way. But that you just really kind of have to choose your subjects based on that. Now, a lot of subjects work great shot at shallow depth of field. What I'm trying to do with my shells, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, I'm trying to get as much depth of field as possible to give the illusion that the object is larger than it is. And so I'm stuck just cranking it, almost all the way over to the side. If you start shooting macro, the first thing I would suggest is whatever your subject is, clean it like you've never cleaned anything in your life. Because I have multiple cats and a dog in this house, and I'll go and take this picture I think is great, and then there'll be a cat hair sticking up on the side of a shell, or there'll be something, there'll be dust or dirt. You want to blow it off, wipe it off. Whatever you're photographing, make sure it's clean, because you're going to see everything. That's one of the neat things about this format, is that you get so much detail, but with all that detail comes, there's some responsibility on your part to make sure everything is nice and crisp and clear. Okay, let's see. So the other part of this stuff with my macro stuff is this idea of false perspective. So let me move over to back here, and I can show you some pictures, and then we can open it up for questions. I think this should be in focus. Let me know if I'm in focus when I get back there. I'll drag my microphone over there too. Okay. So my daughter's now 14, but she used to love dinosaurs. So we had stuff like this sitting around the house, right? So I got my 11x14 out. I'm like, what can I do? What can I shoot that has enough detail to make 11x14 worth it? So,
Nice.
And that's not even quite with the bellows all the way out. I don't think I've actually shot at 1100 millimeters. Most of the time with 11x14, I'm shooting in a range, something like this. Like this is the head of a mandolin. So this is maybe twice the size of an old mandolin. Mike Rosso, damn him, got me interested in shooting 8mm movie film again. So I picked up a couple cameras for cheap. So this is one of my little Keystone cameras. This camera is quite small, but this is a case where, let me get the shine off of it, where I used movements to make the front, even though the front's not straight, I used movements to make the face of the camera in focus with minimal depth of field. I'm from the coast, so I love shells and things. Actually, I'm going to bring this closer. This is a little shark's tooth. It's maybe an inch long, and then you can glorify it by making it bigger and see every.
Oh, there we go.
That's really cool.
That's nice.
Simon wants to see the tintype of my Rolly. Let's see. Let me pull it out. Don't have a permanent storage solutions for 11 by 14 tintypes. It's not the easiest. I've got it in little plastic bags. So this is my tintype of my Rolly. Let me there it is. You can kind of see it. So the Rolly fits basically in the size of the lens on the bottom. Or if you make prints and stuff, you can make it even bigger. So there's the Rolly.
That's fantastic.
That was about a 3-minute exposure.
Yeah.
And the lens was approximately 4 inches away from the camera. And it had 2 huge banks of fluorescent lights. Tintypes require some UV light. So for indoor stuff with that, I either use a lot of strobe power or these banks of fluorescent lights that I've got.
And you can really see the real need for making sure the thing's clean.
Oh yeah,
every speck is going to be seen on.
All my lenses are filthy. It's terrible. I didn't, but you don't realize it. That this print, it looks better than the tintype because I cleaned the lens a little bit. I took a picture of a $1 bill and made a big George Washington.
Yeah, it's amazing when you actually, like I said, I've spent a fair amount of time with $1 bills, using them to make lens barrels, because that's what I do. But there's amazing how much detail is actually in currency.
Oh yeah,
by design. So it's not something that you can forge, but there's so much detail in currency. It's almost ridiculous.
Yeah, this one had a crease down the middle of George Washington's head, and I kind of like that better because you can get you got that line there, so it's not perfect. It's a little bit damaged, kind of like we all are at this point.
Details also. If you look at some of the older stamps, you see a lot of detail on those as well.
Oh yeah. All right, so here's some more shells. So what I first started doing, so you notice most of these have a black background. So what I'm doing, I'll show you when I show you a little slideshow in a minute what my camera setup looks like for this. This shell is tiny. I didn't bring it over here. This isn't the exact shell. I have a bunch that look the same, but this is basically the size of the shell. And you see what it does when you make something bigger. It gives you it gives it so much more weight and shape. I just kind of like natural shapes in general. This is some early stuff I did. This is a fiber print. This is I did with a similar light to that one I just showed you, just a little table lamp. Now, how did I get the black background? If you're going to shoot stuff like this where you want a black background, I would suggest you invest in some velvet, black velvet. It just eats light. You won't see the texture of it, and it eats light. And you can choose, like, this kind of looks like this is that shell again, but it kind of looks like the moon, like a phase of the moon. Started trying to get fancy, and you start taking shells and putting them in weird configurations and shapes.
Well, yeah, because you can start to build like sort of surreal landscapes or like alien.
And it makes I like this shell in particular. It looks like sculptures and things.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started trying to experiment with if you sit it on glass, you can make it kind of float. I'm sorry about all the reflection. You can make it seem like it's floating on something, and you can light behind it so you can get backlighting.
Right.
And again, this shell is not very big.
And for the shots that you do with the black velvet, are you placing the object on the velvet, or are you floating it slightly above the velvet?
I'm using it like that. Sometimes I curve it so you can have it like a seamless background as well. Mm-hmm. You can also use black matte board. You can just sometimes if you get your light too close, the black matte board will show texture.
Right.
And so that's not as thing. Okay, so now we get into the kind of the false perspective stuff. So false perspective is when you take a shell and you do something like this.
Joby, if I can just before we go dive into that one, there's a question that just came in into the chat, and unfortunately I've forgotten already how to pronounce his name. Sure. But the question was, what kind of distance is between your subject and the velvet background?
Doesn't take much, because you if you're shooting with your bellows, way out. The depth of field is so shallow that it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, what I did is you usually buy velvet by the yard, like fabric, like from a fabric store. And I think I bought, I don't know, 3 yards of it or something. And I just drag it. I drape it over stuff. I just use it all. You know how Irving Penn used to, just cover stuff with this ugly gray stuff. It's kind of like that. You're just draping it over or covering it. When I'm shooting straight down, I shoot onto the velvet where the object's just sitting directly on the velvet. You can separate it from the velvet with glass if you need to, or things like that. But like I said, you'll be surprised at how much it eats light. It's so easy, even if you see a tiny bit of texture with a little bit of contrast, just to black that out, you'll never see it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so one of the people I'm most inspired by, which you'll recognize when you see this shell that I just held up, is the photographer named Andreas Feinger. He did a bunch of work with shells in the 60s, I think, and he's a very prolific book writer and teacher. And so you'll see a lot of his shells. So this was one of the ways I learned, new things in photography is I try to copy something that a master did. So this is, he didn't do this, he didn't photograph the shell, but this is kind of, I would say, in the style of, where did that thing go? So this is an angel wing shell. You find them, they're usually broken, but this is the size of the shell. And this is one exposure. So what I did was I made a little sandbox, and then I went out and took the picture of a bunch of different skies and printed the sky out and put the sky behind the shell. And then you shoot up at the shell to make it look like it's larger than it is. So that the sort of complicated thing. So I have, pictures of skies, and they can be in black and white because I'm just shooting black and white film. So, I have pictures of different skies. The problem is I'll accidentally use the same sky for 2 pictures that I really like, and it looks bad to have like the same sky, in 2 pictures back to back at least. Like here's one with that. So this is another one where you're kind of looking up at the object.
I mean, that's really cool. I mean, I'm certainly one of those people that I hate to see photoshopped skies put in front of in front of the subject matter. I hate it. Yeah. It does my head in. And there you are, taking a photograph of the sky, sticking it behind the object, and then taking a photograph of it, and it's great. And I'm it's not.
I lose my mind at Facebook's targeted advertising for these like sky photo filters, and there's like wedding photographer, take a boring image of the couple with a terrible sky, and then hit this button and drop in this beautiful scenery. And I'm just like, God.
Yeah, Photoshop is ruining that.
It drives me nuts. I'm just like, how about you learn how to take a good image? So I'm salty about this. I'll stop.
This is his book on shells. It has a color picture on the front, but it's all black and white pictures, and they're really, really fascinating pictures. In fact, you can actually see him on YouTube if you put in his name. It's Andreas Feinger. If you look on YouTube, you'll find there's a little lecture that he did, but you see some of his shells are amazing. And he talks about how. Someone just walking by. It's because, when we look at shells, we look at them from above, and they look so small. But when you take them and kind of glorify them like this by making them bigger and looking up at them, then you get, he did a lot of, I think it's called typology, where you take a lot of pictures of similar things and kind of have them all compared to each other. So if you're really interested in this type of work, this is a really cheap book. I mean, I might have paid $15 for it.
Is this the same Andreas Feinger who did just a load of work for Time back in the day?
Yes.
Originally, he was a photojournalist.
Yes, he was a photojournalist, and like I said,
of some renown. Like
another great book of his that has a lot of stuff in it. It's experimental work. This book has all the other. He kind of went to extremes. He did this macro stuff, and then he built a 4x5 camera that could handle a 40-some inch lens, and shot telephoto photographs of New York City from New Jersey. So and what he did, the reason why he did that was that he said that the farther you are away from something, the more realistic the ratios of the objects are in the picture. So, for example, let me see if I can find one. All the buildings, like if you're up close to a building and you're looking at cars and stuff, everything's certain size. But if you're far back and you're zooming in on something, then it puts everything in size perspective. Does that make sense? I guess.
Yeah.
Here's a picture. Here's a picture of his camera that he built, and then you can, like, this is the Empire State Building from New Jersey.
Wow.
So for the camera builders in the group, I sense a challenge.
Oh, I know. Well, I've been wanting to get some of those, those Nikon lenses that have the backs that are exchangeable, so you can go. What was it? It's like 600, 800, 1200, or something like that. So that would be fun to shoot on 4x5. Another book. I have 3 of his books. The other one's called The Anatomy of Nature. If you're interested in nature photography and stuff like that, as far as similar to what I've been showing you, this is also a good book. It has less pictures in it, more words, but it's interesting. I mean, I was trying to go back and look and like, what was my first influence? What was I first looking at this stuff? And it was that, and then the other, probably well-known person is Carl Bosfeld. He has all these large format pictures of flowers and leaves and ferns and things. They're really quite beautiful. I don't think anyone's ever really explained his technique, like how he got what he got. But they're very soft and very highly detailed. But that's also an inexpensive and great book. Okay, so let me show you a couple. Okay, so things that I haven't really talked about that you might want to add to your repertoire things is, one is something like this where you can reduce. Let's say you have a larger camera and you want to put a smaller lens on. You get basically what we would call an adapter, right? This is an adapter for my 11x14 to shoot Sinar size lens boards. And so for Christmas, I'm getting one that'll reduce down to Technica size lens boards. That'll give me the ability to put a 90mm lens on my 11x14, which I'm kind of excited about. The other thing is something like this. Well, let's say you have a bigger camera and you want to reduce, you just get a reducing back. So this is my 8x10 reducer to 4x5 on my Chamonix. Now, those of you who have roll film backs for your 4x5, you can do the same thing. You can get, you'll get really great quality images. You can put movements on them. You can get that medium format depth of field, but you can get that enlargement by using the bellows on your 4x5, which is
right.
That's exactly what I've done once with a Hasselblad, because I almost stupidly bought a Sinar to Hasselblad adapter, a genuine one as well. And I thought, well, I've got it, so I need to do something with it. And it was so difficult to actually do anything with it, and because it's the amount of extension you need and so on and so on. And in the end, I used a 90mm as you said, because I didn't need as much extension to be able to get the image. But right. the problem is, of course, that the film plane is much further back than it would be, because you're just attaching a Hasselblad body, and then the actual film itself is sitting much further back at the back of the camera, rather than being level with the back of the camera. So that caused quite a few technical problems. And as you were saying earlier, that meant that you have to get very close to something, and the light draw that you require is considerable. I'm just thinking that this might be a good time to open things up to our larger audience, to ask questions as you perhaps go through some of these.
Let me show you one more thing.
Yeah.
Okay. How did I shoot this picture?
By cheating.
I'm going to say you printed out an image.
It's one exposure.
On top. One exposure, one glass. The 3 shells on the top are above the glass, and the shell below is below the glass.
Oh, you're getting warmer.
Damn it. Anybody else? Who's got a guess? I made mine. I got you a lead.
You can unmute yourself and just
toss it out there.
Ask the question. or answer.
Would it help if I told you I did not use a camera to make this image?
Oh.
I think the answer is no.
So use a camera.
So I made this image with my Epson V.
With a scanner.
Yeah. So you just put the shells on and put the big shell on top, and you can make stuff like this. So you can do the same effect on film if you want to. You just have to, what you have to do is you have to build a platform, put glass on it, and put your camera underneath and shoot up. But you can get, and again, it's a perspective thing. As we expect when we see something, you know, horizontally like this, we expect to see it in that format, but it was photographed vertically, and that was what gives it the, you know, kind of the mystery of it floating there, which is kind of cool. Yeah. All right. You said you had some questions.
Yeah. So I think, well, I've asked quite a few as we've been going along. So let's open it up to our audience that we have. To see if anybody has any questions, and just jump in there. If too many people ask, then we'll do the raise your hand thing. But let's just see how we get going.
Yeah. And if nobody does, I know I do, but I've already talked too much as it is. So does anybody have any questions? Jim, I think you might. I see your lips moving. Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, he's still muted there, Jim. Unless actually, didn't you mute him?
No, he can unmute. No, he can unmute. Everybody can unmute themselves.
Oh, okay.
I got a question.
All right.
Hey, Joby, have you ever tried mounting the scanner to the back of the camera and making a scanning back image?
I have not. I've been concerned about, you know how the Epsons have locks that, you know, they kind of lock everything in place when you move them. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid of putting it vertically and doing it instead of breaking it. But I've seen people do it, you know, make scan backs for stuff, and I wasn't overly impressed with that stuff. What kind of made me do it for the shells was I was stuck inside. I was living in New York State, and it was snowed for like 3 or 4 days in a row, and I was just bored as hell. So I just said, what? And I was scanning. My wife and daughter were making paper snowflakes. You know how you do paper cutting and make snowflakes. So I was scanning those, and then I had this. We brought shells from North Carolina just to kind of, you know, remind us of home, and I just stuck them on my scanner once and went, oh wow, there's a fair amount of depth of field when you put stuff on the flat, you know, on the flat glass of your scanner, and then when you layer it like I did with that shot I showed you, it really makes things look cool. And you just cut all the lights off in the room so you get a black background. But you can do a lot. If you look on my Instagram feed, you'll see I put a lot of cameras like lens first on my scanner. It makes perspective really weird. I mean, it makes my Pentax K1000 look like a Kiev. I mean, it looks really chunky and blocky, and I think somebody mentioned that. I can't remember, but anyway. Yeah. That's just a side note. I mean, that's not really large format photography, but it's kind of what I can do with that. What's kind of nice is, you know, one of the ways I make tintypes is I do tintype printing, which means I'll take either a film image or a digital image, and I will print it out onto a overhead transparency, and then put in an enlarger and project that onto a tintype 1:1. So I have an 8x10 enlarger, so I can make 8x10 or smaller tintypes that way. When they look great, and you end up being able to get things onto a tintype you normally couldn't get on there. So you can get the depth of field you want onto a tintype, you know, that has a fair amount of detail in it, as much as the printer can put onto the transparency paper.
And I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you, because I've been trying to wrap my head around macro for a while. And I've done a fair amount, but this had a lot of really good tips. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome.
I'm still sort of a dabbler, I think, but you know, Simon asked me about this a couple weeks ago, so it gave me enough time to seem educated by reading a lot and doing some more experimentation on my own. But I feel like I'm just kind of scratching the surface of what I want to do with it. But you know, as we're stuck at home, you know, I'm primarily a portrait photographer, so I'm in hell right now. not being able to be around other people. And my wife and daughter are so over being photographed
Yeah, same.
that I can't get them to post or anything. I mean, I've had this Cook lens for like a month now, and I don't have anybody to post for me, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah,
So,
I've got 3 new brass lenses as well that I'm like, no. My wife's like, yeah, don't.
Yeah. I said, but it's going to make you look beautiful. It's the best lens in the world.
And then she's like, what do you mean make me look
That's
beautiful?
what
Didn't I already look beautiful?
One you bought.
Yeah.
I like, I even offered, I mean, I tried to shoot her with an 18-inch Verito, which is like super soft. I mean, it makes people look super smooth. And she's like, no.
Out of curiosity, I was wondering, like earlier you mentioned that there was a ratio that's too close where the objects are unidentifiable.
Right.
And I was wondering, have you ever thought of like shooting that ratio anyways, but then using lens movements to essentially take images in series like that and then print them and stitch them together?
Oh, kind of like a diptych or a triptych or that sort of thing.
Exactly. But like do them in a grid so you get really close where those things are unidentifiable and single, but then like print them and put them into a grid.
I've done stuff with like that with smaller formats. Like I shot a person's face where I just shot each part of their face, like their eyes and their nose and stuff, and then kind of like turned their face into a flat fan where their ears are out on the edge and stuff. But I haven't tried doing it with macro. That's an interesting idea, you know, a way to get it. It's like you know, combining images to get a greater resolution out of a bigger image. You know, you just have to really choose what your subjects are. And the best thing is it's just fun to play around. The nice thing about shooting still life from a portrait photographer is it doesn't complain, it doesn't move, it stays there overnight. You know, there are a lot of, I mean, if you have a dedicated space in your house where you can just kind of set stuff up, you can leave things relatively set up so you can go down and bang out a couple images in a few minutes and then come back up and pretend like you were being a responsible parent and everything else. So it's, in that case, I mean, in that sense, I really like it because I just kind of set stuff up over here to the left and just come down, do a little bit, come down a little, do a little bit.
Cool. Also, if you have something that can rotate your subject, like those shells, to a certain degree, you can lock it, like rotate it 5 degrees, so you could rotate 5 degrees. You could theoretically shoot those macro images like at a 10-degree rotation, say, and just put together like X-ray film, large and cheap, right?
Well, I wanted
36 or 6 shots from the same perspective, but you're rotating the object.
Yeah, I wanted to do a tintype movie like that. I thought that would be cool to have, you know, a tintype of different angles of. So I was using an old Graflex 22. You know, it was one of those really crappy American TLRs, but it was really beautiful because it was great.
Hey, now I want one of those.
I think it's called a Graphic 22. I've got it over there somewhere. But yeah, it looks great. It shoots crappy. It's incredibly dull ground glass. It's kind of slow shutter speeds. It's not a great camera, but it looks fantastic. It has just the right amount of chrome on it. It's just great. And what I did was I did it digitally first just to try it, and I just kind of shot it and moved it like 10 degrees over and over again. Ended up like shooting 30 shots, and then I made it into a movie. Nice. And you got it spinning around. I thought that would be really cool if I made a tintype of each of those angles, because just, you know, you get that aesthetic of all the weird stuff on the edges and everything. I mean, I tend to shoot pretty clean tintypes, but there'd be just enough to have it look pretty neat. And
also, just on a side note, this is a 5-minute call. We'll wrap you up at around 12:30, and then we'll move on to Jim, if that's okay with everybody. So if you have any last-minute questions for Joby, now is a really good time to ask him. Jim does.
Joby, do you have a preferred f-stop that you like to use with, or does it depend on the various lenses that you're using?
I seem to be around f45, between 45 and
going down to 90 or 64 or anything like that.
I've done most of the lenses I have only go to about 90 at the most, so I'm usually around 45 to 64. That seems to be, I mean, between my light, the amount of light I've got, and the lenses I'm using, that seems to be where I'm holding steady, basically.
Have you done? Is it mainly sharp work, or have you done any soft focus work? You're talking about the Cook that you have there. Have you shot?
Yeah, I'm just getting into it. In fact, as soon as we're done here today, I'm hooking up my 11x14 and trying to start, you know, like that picture this picture of the I want to do this one again, with something softer and see what I can get. The problem is, with the soft lenses, when you stop them down, they lose their softness. So I'm not sure that I'd have to shoot it wide open to see, what kind of the thing that, like, I tried those shells that you saw shot at wider apertures, and you lose the effect of it looking large when it becomes isolated by depth of field. So I think for stuff like the shells, I'm going to kind of stay, stopping down. My Cook only stops down to 16, I think. So, and my Ferritos, I think, only go to 22. So
Right.
it's, you have to decide. I mean, the Veritos kind of lose their specialness by F11. So I'm going to try shooting some of these things wide open and see what happens.
Yeah, I've done a fair amount of macro flower work in the studio, and a lot of it's soft focus. So depending on the character of the lens, you'll get an area of inside of a flower that's going to be sharp, and just a subtle sharpness, and then the rest, depending on the quality of the lens, has a real pretty diffusion to it, which can be quite interesting. But some people don't like it, some people do. And if I start stopping those lenses down, then you gain a little bit more depth of field. But you're right; it's very minimal when you're in that close.
Oh yeah, and don't do this outside. Don't shoot a flower outside.
I'm fortunate; I've got a 11 by 14 Century 8A behind me, and that's got almost 4 feet of bellows extension.
Wow!
So depending on the lenses I use, I can get in real close. So I know what you're talking about, and you just kind of walk away and come back.
That's essentially the size of a small child's torso. Or just a small child. You can fit a small child inside the bellows of that camera.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever shot any X-ray film?
I have not.
It's for everybody. It's a cheap way to shoot in the studio.
It's the cheapest.
I've used it outside, and I can't really get my head around it. I know friends of mine that can, but in the studio, it seems to be more controllable for me, and it goes up to 14 by 17. So I've done some studio 14-17. I'd say close up. Maybe they're macro. I haven't really figured them out, but it's a cheap way.
Is it double sided or single sided?
You can get single sided or double, depending.
Yeah, because my problem is I just think I would scratch the hell out of it by the way I process stuff.
You gotta realistically. I shoot 8 by 10, and I process it in dip and dunk tanks. And then the 11 by 14, 14-17, I'll do in a flat bottom tray. You have to be careful in handling it. I don't know, honestly, I don't know how people scratch it. I really don't.
Well, I do.
Loading and unloading the film holders, you got to be, well, Eric, you're.
Yeah. That's why I get the single sided stuff.
You have to be careful when you're handling it. And everybody seems to scratch it. I think I've maybe scratched one piece in all the years I've shot it. So.
Okay. We have
Bob. Oh, you're going to do Bob there?
Yeah, I was going to do one last question from Bob because he raised his hand oh so politely, and then we'll close up Joby and move on to Jim.
That's okay. You guys have answered it already. I was just worried about the scratch factor with X-ray film, and you addressed that. Thank you.
I mean, I can totally nerd out on that. So because I've shot a ton of X-ray film, but we can do that later. Like the Kodak B/RA, the one-sided, is arguably the best, but they've stopped making it. So you need to start stocking up on it now. And then if you do shoot the double-sided stuff and you're worried about cutting it, it's orthochromatic. You can shoot underneath the red light. I'll take a cutting board that has like the draw razor, not the chopping one, and then take wax paper and lay the wax paper on all the contact surfaces. Clean it off first, lay the wax paper down, and that way the bottom side emulsion, when you're sliding it to cut it, is sliding on something soft, which is the wax paper, not the generally hard surface of the cutting board itself. And that's a pretty decent way to cut double-sided X-ray film without scratching the living crap out of the reverse side. But then I'm a ham-fisted fool when I load my film into the carriers, so that's where I lose it. I just get these big long scratches.
My other concern with the X-ray film would be the fact that it's orthochromatic. Yeah. If I'm using hot lights like flash, then you have to give it even more power to kind of.
Yeah, and it has a wicked reciprocity factor over 1 minute. it has a wicked reciprocity factor.
Yeah, we didn't get into reciprocity really, but my favorite film to shoot for 4x5, which I still have about 200 sheets of, is Fuji Acros, because you got 2 minutes of grace.
Right.
2 minutes before you have to worry about reciprocity at all. For larger formats, I tend to shoot a lot of HP5 and FP4. HP5 has a pretty awful reciprocity of like 1.31. But I just do the math, I have a calculator and kind of math it out. But, exposures can be long. It can be minute or longer.
Right.
And you just kind of click it. But outdoor exposures can be like that too, depending upon what you're shooting.
So, but yeah, Bob, you can always ping me on a side channel. I've spent more time, because I'm always perpetually poor, shooting X-ray and litho and RC paper in large format. That's how I got into it. I rarely shoot large format commercial film because I can't afford it. So anybody looking for cheap large format film shooting options, just ping me and I can go on for days. So with that said, Joby, dude, thank you so much.
Oh yeah,
thank you. Awesome.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Eye of Simon, any last word?
Yeah, no, it's been fascinating, and it's been so useful seeing the visuals, because you did talk about the false perspective in the podcast, but seeing how you do it and explain it in the way you do it, it's really it's really come true for me there. So that's been absolutely fantastic. And as Greg has just chatted up there saying it's inspirational, and it is, because I'm thinking I could do this. I could have a go at this, which is actually I do that so many times when we have a great guest on the show. I'm thinking I could do that, and realize no, I can't, but I can try. So
like Nick's holograms. I just know I can't do that.
So that's what my 8x10 looks like when I'm shooting something small.
Oh wow,
dude.
And I just have it on the floor because it's that way I can actually see the ground glass without having to stand on a ladder or anything.
That's just dumb.
That's that was of let me see if I can find it. Let's see, where is it?
Ever afraid it's going to fall off of there?
No, it's pretty locked in. Let's see, where's that?
Just don't want an earthquake.
Well, that quarter inch screw really makes me worried.
Yeah.
Where is it? Damn it. Sorry, I'm not trying to show you everything here. I'm just trying to find rapid fire. Shit. Okay, well, I'm not going to find it. Dude, I took a picture of a that Bellows draw that you see was from photographing a lifesaver, a lifesaver that's like this, and I put it on the 4x5 sheet of film about that big, and then I printed it at 16x20. So you got this massive. That's the other thing about shells and things like that. When you light them, you want when a shell has relief on it, you want to light it from the side so you get all the relief very obvious on it, rather than shooting it head on or at an angle where it kind of you lose relief. That's what makes that that photograph of the angel wing so nice, because it's curved and it's got all these ripples and things on it. You could see all that. Now, Jim, that would be a pretty badass carbon print with relief on top of relief.
Yeah. And sorry, let's say something.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that seems like a good time we can take a 5-minute nature break, replenish your coffees, get fresh batteries for your kitty ears. Make sure those things don't run out. And dude, they're unmistakable. So 5-minute break and see. All right, excellent.
Great stuff. Thank you again, Joby.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you. Simon, are you still there?
Hey, Ethan. Oh, no, you're muted.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Are those those headphones? Are they the pro? Sorry, yeah, the headphones. Are they the pro headphones?
No, so I actually have some pro headphones. These are Bluetooth headphones, so I can walk around my shop while I'm talking to people and listen without a cord. I've been trying to assemble printers on live stream every morning, and I get all tangled up. There's enough cords on my desk. I'm fiddling with OBS right now.
Yeah, I was going to be fiddling with OBS, and then I couldn't find the connection, the cable for my Sony to connect it to the computer. So hence why there's no visual for me, which I'm gutted. I was going to show the world my carbon Tango KTM colored whatever adventurer. Which I love. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, despite what Andrew says about it. There you go.
It's memorable, that's for sure.
Oh yes, and you can find it in a dark place.
Yeah,
yeah. In fact, when I went to collect it, I was went to Steve Lloyd's new workshop for chroma camera, and we walked in there, and it was quite dull, dimly lit, and so but literally I was just looking around, because I'd never seen the place before, and my eyes just pounced upon it. I wasn't looking for my camera, the camera found me. You know, it was incredible. It actually gets to the point where it's just like really dim. It really jumps out at you.
You're saying it glows in the dark?
That's the thing. I almost thought it might do, but it doesn't. But I guess it's fluorescent, because it does have a glow about it.
Because you can 3D print glow in the dark stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got
Would that fog film? If you like printed a glow in the dark element body? Okay, I figured.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I do not print in glow in the dark, even if people request them.
I want a refund.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
in the case of the Carbon Adventurer, the parts that I've printed in orange are not areas that are going to have any impact on the light tightness. Alternatively, some of them, they're also there's a bit of vinyl, black vinyl that's attached to them as well. Although he does that whether it's black or not. It's as much about getting the fit right of the components. But no, these particular bits, they don't interfere with light tightness at all. So they could go glow in the dark. But the problem with glow in the dark is it only really looks good when it's glowing. Because when it's not glowing, it's just sort of like a translucent off-white, and it's really not particularly attractive at all. Yeah, I've got a cup of tea coming soon and a piece of chocolate birthday cake. I'm looking forward to this. Shame I can't.
We still need to sing your son his happy birthday song.
He did pop in earlier, and I did say to him they've offered all to sing happy birthday. I don't know if you actually offered to sing it, but I did say that you were all prepared to do that, and he felt that was pretty cool actually. But then he ran off just in case it might happen.
See, you don't give them the option. You just say, "Hey, come here," and then we all sing him happy birthday, and then that's that. I have a 14-year-old. He's right here. This is what has to be done at that age.
Yeah. No,
which earns me the sarcastic eye roll and the head shake.
Yeah, and you'll know it's very well. Certainly in the case of most of them, it's very difficult to get them to sit, stand, or anything for a photograph of that age. But I last year, no, it was the year before, my word, because we went out into the world. I got a good photograph of him, and that we were in a restaurant, and had a fast lens, and I was using the Leica, one of the few times I've ever used one, and actually got some good photos out of it. And it just happened to have a seriously expensive lens on it as well, which I couldn't afford to keep. But I just goes to him, I'm going to take your photograph. He moaned. I said, well, you don't have to smile. He goes, you just grimace or whatever, just be normal. And he was like, oh, okay. I really cheered him up, looking miserable for the camera. So it was a good shot.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like once you start talking, as we have done lately, we've talked to like a metric blank ton of tintypists and wet plate portraitists. When I was talking with a buddy of mine who used to run a wet plate portrait studio in San Francisco called Photo Booth San Francisco, and so he's done thousands of tintype portraits commercially, and he said, the thing I learned quickly is that you can't tell people to smile for those because the exposures are so long and they end up looking like they're grimacing. He's like, in reality, people aren't meant to hold a smile. Like a smile is a fleeting thing. It's like a thing, and when you try to hide it, when you try to hold it, it actually hurts. Like when you like pose for your middle school photo, it's just like, that's why everybody looks so unnatural and painful. It's because you're not really meant to do that. Yeah. So when you just get people in front of a camera, just relax and be yourself and just talk with them, you get a much better image than telling them to smile.
That's why I love large format portraits so much, because you force the person, like everybody has their Instagram face.
Yep.
For 2 seconds, but then okay, now I got to focus on your face for the ground glass. Now hold still while I do this. By then they've let their guard down a little bit, and you get a more genuine photograph of someone.
Yeah, I'll try to get like the normal shot on the first side of the film holder, and then as I'm loading the second, flipping it over and doing my thing casually, whatever. As soon as the dark slide is out, I'll try to crack some terrible joke and try to get like an instantaneous, even just a little bit of a grin or a laugh or something, because I have a lot of really terrible, dumb jokes. And then that's the second more impromptu, like maybe I'll try to get some genuine sort of emotion or laughter or something out of them.
I did
a project.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the good timing to give a bit of a shout out to the Sunday 16 podcast when they had Shane Bolkovich on there about 2 weeks ago. And of course, we had him on the show not that long ago. And there's obviously crossover between our episode and theirs, but there's quite a lot that isn't. And he talked quite extensively about not smiling because he's a wet plate photographer, and he really can't stand people smiling in photographs. He really railed against it in a big way.
Shane?
So it's strangely enough, yeah. So
who would have thought?
Yeah. So if you want to hear an extended version of that kind of discussion, head over to Shane on the 16 podcast from a few weeks ago.
Shane's a lovely man, but he has opinions.
He does. Yeah.
I think Mark Twain has a famous quote about that, about not smiling for portraits. I can't remember what it is.
There's a million Mark Twain quotes, and 3/4 of them were made up.
But
Isn't that Mark Twain quote?
I did a project last year. I teach at the school in Winston-Salem for visual art, and they had a grant to take some inner city kids and do some art related projects with them. And one of the projects I did was that they said, "Can you teach this group of 12 kids in 4 45-minute to hour classes something about film photography?" I went, what can I do? So I decided to do, I set up a project called Old School Selfies. What I did was I set up my 4x5, and I teamed the kids up in little groups of 3, and they all ran the camera front and back, and I handed them a long cable release with a bulb, and they shot their own portraits. And the other kids in the class ran the camera, and then I had a bunch of 4x5 tubes, so they all developed their own film, and they contact printed their own portraits. And by the end, they had 4x5 contact prints to take home. And some of the portraits turned out really well. Like one of them, I said, okay, you have to do kind of your first shot. They each got one film holder, so it had a front and a back. So okay, well, the first shot has to be kind of like your school picture, where you're kind of formal, and the other picture can be anything you want. And there was one of my favorite pictures. I'll have to show these pictures some other time. One of my favorite pictures is the kid for his formal picture looks like this. Like he's really uptight, like he didn't want to be photographed at all, just like his shoulders are raised, everything's bad. And then the picture where he got to pose however he wanted, he did this. And he smiled and he looked away. It was like the best thing. He thought he was getting away with something. And it's one of the best portraits because it's so interesting for him to really show his personality that way. But I got a couple really nice ones from that project. I did 7th grade boys and 8th grade girls, and they were really, really something.
Before on that note, I just put a link in. There's a nonprofit here in San Francisco Bay Area called First Exposures that introduces usually high school age kids from various economic backgrounds to film. And it's a lovely, lovely program. So I highly encourage people who are interested in that sort of thing to check out First Exposures. I don't know if they have, if they do it in other cities, but it's a great program to sort of like look at and emulate. They've been in San Francisco for a while. I have a friend who teaches and mentors for them. But with that, I think peanut butter pretzels for me goes America. I just had a peanut butter cupcake because America. Anyways, all right. So I think Simon, should we introduce our next guest, our next long-suffering, very patient guest?
Yes, that'll be you, Jim. He's looking behind. Is it me? It seems to be looking at me. So yes, we'll crack on with the second part of tonight's gathering, and we have Jim Fitzgerald, who was on the podcast not that long ago at all, just a I don't know, 2 episodes ago, something like that. And that episode majored very much on carbon printing, which I think it'd be fair to say that Jim is a master of carbon printing. You may blush, Jim, but it's true. But part of the discussions where it touched upon some of his lenses and his lenses sound amazing. And we didn't really have time to talk about Jim's lenses, and Jim's going to kindly talk us through some of the equipment that he uses as lenses, and who knows, we may talk about carbon printing, and then again at the end of all of this, there will be a Q&A session, and we can ask you whatever we like.
You're a tease. You sort of say we might talk about, and I thought you were about to say camera, because Jim also makes his own large format cameras, and I was like. And he said carbon printing, which is very cool, mind you. But I personally am much more excited.
I forgot about that as well. So
I didn't.
Yes. No. So I apologise. And on that note, we will hand over to Jim.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. Eric, Simon, thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure.
I'll say right up front, I'm no lens expert. Okay, there's so many people I know that know a great deal more about lenses than I do. I just find lenses, I like the look of the imagery, and so I've just collected them over the years because I've done a lot of research in studying lenses and looking at images that people have posted, and I find out what the lens is, and it's like, okay, well, I like the way that looks, so I'm going to go hunt for one of those lenses. So I've been on the hunt for lenses for many, many years. But when you ask me, you know, the difference between an achromat and a pitfall and a, you know, I can kind of know the basics, but all of that technical stuff I leave to the people that are really the experts. And I've got several friends of mine that I can ask those questions to. So what I've done over the years, I've been collecting lenses, easily for close to 15 years now. And I was fortunate to get into lens collecting when it was at the beginning of the digital age, or digital was really taking over, and people were dumping a lot of their film lenses on eBay for just dirt cheap. And so I started buying lenses and learning as I went along how I liked the look. Some of them I just liked them because they were just beautiful objects in themselves. So I started to amass a rather large collection. I ended up building myself a lens cabinet because I was getting out of control. But at one point I had close to 50 lenses that I had collected, and they were all different types, new lenses, old lenses, and I'll kind of, to let everybody know, if you don't know, I shoot 4 different formats. So it's 8x10, 8x20, 11x14, and 14x17. So I've built cameras in every one of those formats. And I've said all along my point and shoot is my 8x10 because it's so small, it's so light. And when you get into ultra large format, it's a whole different scenario. And so you learn lenses that cover, you know, these formats. You learn lenses that will work beautifully with one format. And if you, especially with a pitfall lens, if you take a pitfall lens and you use it with a format that's it's not designed to cover, that's when you tend to get the swirliness in the background that you see. Some people like that. Some people it makes you sick because it's like, I mean, it's like the world spinning. I've been there many times when I was younger, and you know that didn't end up too nice because I was praying at the porcelain altar. So from the whirlies. So some of those lenses can give you that look, and some people prefer it. And that's generally how I determined what I liked and what I was trying to say with the images I was creating. So I just started amassing these lenses because I was buying them for next to nothing. I bought a beautiful Darlow pitfall 13-inch that I still have today off of eBay. That it's a pretty cool story because on the back of the lens, there was this big glob that looked like, I mean, it just looked like a terrible deformation in the glass. It just looked ugly, and it was on 2/3 of the back of the lens. And so I bought the lens for $90, and I got it, and I took the element off, and I rinsed it under some hot water, and I found out that it was dried Coca-Cola that was on there, and the lens was pristine. It was absolutely gorgeous, and it's still in my collection. It's a really, really wonderful lens. It has an iris. I forget when it's made, but it gives me just some beautiful images. So I've kept that lens, and you learn over the years to just kind of find lenses that give you the feel and the look that you want. And every lens has its own unique characteristic. So be it a new lens, be it an old lens, lenses from the same manufacturers will have, different signatures. They all have their own signature look and feel. And some lenses, brass barrel lenses that don't have any maker's name on them, sometimes can be absolute sleepers that are just amazing. And so I encourage everybody to kind of, you kind of find something that is a no name, and if it's not too expensive, buy the thing and try it out and see. You might find something that's just really, really spectacular. But over the years, I've whittled down my collection to the favorite lenses that I like to use, and I've sold several just wonderful lenses, and quite honestly, I've made some really good money on lenses because I bought them early, and they were wonderful brand name lenses. I mean, as an example, I had a 16 1/4 inch Voigtlander Portrait Euroscope Series 3 number 6, and it's an amazing lens. I bought the lens for $600, and I sold it for $3,200. And I use the lens, and it's a studio camera lens. It's a big lens, but it's just incredible. And I do more work in the landscape outside than I do in the studio. So I thought, okay, this is a lens that I can take that money and invest it in film and camera parts for building cameras, etc. So I sold it to a fellow who really, really wanted it, and I got the market value at the time for it. So I've whittled down the collection to about 20. I actually counted everything and kind of made a list here, so I'd have maybe make some sense during this discussion. I've got about 22 lenses that I still have that I use. Some of them I haven't used for a while. Others they go in my kit whenever I go out. So I've got a backpack for my 8x10, one for my 820 and my 14-17, and I've dedicated the 11x14 to just the studio because I've got the Century 8A behind me here is my studio camera. So that's when I shoot 11x14, I'm using that. I sold the 11x14 I built to a good friend of mine, and I still see it all the time because we go out and photograph together. But I think it's wise, at least for me, and it's a recommendation I make to friends, is to just find a set of lenses that you like to use for a certain format and get to know them. And maybe pick one lens, depending. Do you like to shoot, sharp images? Do you like to shoot soft focus, pictorialist style images? I vacillate between both worlds, and I love them both. And so I've kind of just whittled down my collection to lenses that give me the best of both worlds. And so, with that, for like my 8x10 that I take out, I bought a few years ago. I bought a brand new Cook triple convertible, the 15A. So you've got 3 focal lengths. It's 312 millimeters. The 455, I think 19 millimeters, and a 25.5. And let me tell you, it's just an amazing lens. People talk about, well, when you use a single component, you lose sharpness, you lose contrast. It's like, really, I'm a contact printer, and it compares to a single focal length 450 or 600 millimeter lens side by side. I'd have no problem comparing images. So to me, it made sense to be able to have that one lens that will cover all 3 of the formats I take out in the field. So I can put it in my 820 kit, I can put it in my 14-17 kit, and I just use the single component, either 19 or 24 inch, 25 inch, depending on what I want to shoot with that one lens. Then I will take, in my 8x10, I'll take a little Brunjes ideoscope that I've had that is only half a lens. It's a 150 millimeter lens with both components. It's a rectilinear design, so you can unscrew it, the front and the back, and it'll double your focal length. So when I bought the lens, it only had the front, didn't have the back. So it basically made it a 300 millimeter f9 instead of a 150 4.5. And it is an absolutely incredible lens shot just at about f10. It has a beautiful glow to it, and the highlight diffusion is just incredible. And there's a beautiful definition that it still gives. It's not all mushy and all really super soft. So it's really one of my favorite soft focus lenses. But I've shot that lens stopped down to like f32, and it's amazing. And the thing is it only weighs, it weighs like, oh gosh, less than a pound. This is the lens right here. I don't know whether you can, I mean, so here's actually the lens, and the front, this is just, it was mounted into a Compure shutter. So, I mean, this thing that weighs nothing. So to put this in my bag, and it covers my 8x10, and it's like a standard focal length. So I can shoot this for landscapes. I've done a few environmental portraits with this, and the separation is just, it's just awesome. It's really a great lens. And these are, Brunjes ideoscopes are very popular. They're hard to find, and they're quite expensive, you know, if you can find them. But it's an example. If somebody say, well, yeah, I've only got half the lens. Okay, well, yeah. Okay, this I think they come in a series from 0 to 5, I believe is the series. So this is the 150. I think this was the number 5. And then there was a 190 that was number 4, and it goes down. I've got a number 1, which is a 19 inch. There's a number 0, which is a 24 inch, which is really rare. And then I've got I had a 2 and a 3. So I did have a 375 or 385, I think it was, but it was actually pretty big for my 8x10. And having this one, I sold that ideoscope and decided to keep this one, which really is much easier for me to carry out in the field than the bigger one was. This takes up less space. So it's lenses that I really, really enjoy. The look and the quality of the image that you get with one of the ideoscopes is a kind of a favorite of mine. So I would suggest that, you know, if anybody's interested in, you know, a nice quality soft focus lens, they're not cheap. When I got them, they were, but they're not cheap now because they're pretty well known. Now, on the extreme end, that's the small one. Here's the big one. Okay, so this is the 19 inch. Okay, so as you can see, it's got its own
pie plate.
Yeah. So this is a 19 inch f5. Okay, and this on my studio camera is just amazing. It's just a great lens. And I've been trying to get people over for portrait work and start to learn portraiture more than I have in the past. My wife's willing to sit with me, but she just got home from a 4-month trip overseas, and I got to let her recuperate before we can get into doing some portrait work. But this is just
Jim. Could you please put it down? I'm starting to sweat.
Well, this is just one.
Does that have an integrated shutter in the back? Is that one of the pneumatic air shutters?
Shutter in the back. Yeah. So it's got an instantaneous on it, and then you can, do bulb, and I can actually get it down to about, I can get it pretty quick. It's 1/25th of a second if it's instantaneous, and working the bulb quick, I can get it a little faster than that. But I develop my film by inspection, so if I'm off a little bit, I can always compensate, during development. But yeah, this is a lens you don't want to take out in the field. It weighs too damn much.
Oh, come on.
So I figured I'd show you that. That's the Ideascopes are just wonderful lenses. I would highly recommend if anybody's interested in their abilities, both sharp and soft. They're wonderful soft focus lenses, but when you get sharp, they work quite well also. So that's something that I really enjoy. But so generally, if getting back to the 8x10 kit, I'll take out the little Ideascope. I'll take out my Cook. Now sometimes if I don't want to take out the Cook, I've got a Fuji 240A, which just covers 8x10, and it's an amazingly sharp lens. And I've shot that. One of the images that's most recognizable of mine is I've got an image on my website, Eye of the Oak, that I shot that image at f90. It's a 3.5 minute exposure, and the contact print is just amazing. It's just amazingly sharp, and the depth is just incredible. And so we were talking about diffraction and all that, and I don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. And and that little lens, it's just a little small lens. Again, it's small, doesn't take up a lot of space, doesn't weigh a lot. So if you're backpacking, then, I consider that from a weight aspect. And what do I get with that lens? And it's a little bit shorter. You can go much shorter on an 8x10 as far as a focal length goes. But I like that lens. It doesn't distort things. I can get in pretty close and still still get some beautiful imagery. So I'll take that out. And then the other soft focus lens that I'll take out with me, this is a 15-inch Spencer Portland. And this is one of those holy grail lenses that that people ask me about, how do you find this? Well, Spencer Portland was one of those lenses that was very well known back in the 20s as the ability to use as a portrait. And a landscape lens. That's why it's called a Portland. It's portraiture and landscape. Okay. Now this lens basically goes from f5.6 to 32. Again, this is a lens I've shot both sharp, wide open, and I've shot it stopped down to 32. And again, it's a single meniscus lens. I mean, that's it. There it is. And this thing is just absolutely beautiful. It has a signature that's just incredible. And I shoot it about f6. I kind of work in between the stops to find the sweet spot. And what I've found, every lens has a sweet spot when you're looking at shooting, say, softer focus. Some of them, when you shoot them wide open, they're really, really soft. If you stop them down about a stop or half a stop or 2/3 or a stop and a third, you'll find the sweet spot. It takes a little while, but then I just leave it there. I focus it with it at the shooting aperture, and away I go. And, I'll either, with this lens, it's pretty much cap off, cap on, or put a Packard shutter behind it.
With that particular, since it's a single meniscus, the earliest lens designs in the 1800s that were used were just that. It was a landscape lens, was a single element in it, but the design had the aperture placed in front of it, and there's, depending on the aperture size, there's a bit of math, right, to the distance that aperture was placed from the lone element.
Yeah.
And they're pretty unique because modern lenses, the apertures are almost always either in between the elements or behind, and that's what we're used to. So for that particular design, which is essentially the same as the original lens design, is the aperture in the front or behind it?
That's in the front.
Okay.
Yeah. It's right here. There's no glass right here.
Right.
And it's hard to see the aperture blades.
Yeah.
are right here, and then lenses on the back. So I have several meniscus lenses that I use. Again, this one,
Jim, can I just stop you there a second? And when you say about using that wide open, there's wide open by literally just opening the blades.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I've also got a meniscus lens where I would actually class wide open as by unscrewing that cylinder, and so that the meniscus lens is completely open to the world.
Correct.
And I'm just wondering which way when you're talking wide open, which way you're describing that.
That's a good point that you bring up, Simon, and I've got something I can comment on that. This has an aperture, okay? So you can, there we go. You can kind of see how I'm turning. Okay, so when I say wide open, it's basically I'm opening the aperture as wide as it'll go. So this is marked at 5.6. Right. Okay, now I did have a Dahlmeyer landscape lens. Okay, that was a number 4, and I sold it here a while back. But what you could do with that is it had wheel stops.
Right.
So you could unscrew that all, and basically you'd have the meniscus at the back, and you put a lens cap over it, and you'd have the wheel stops and everything be gone. It would open that lens up and make it about an f4, f5 lens, and you could shoot it wide open. And what it would give you is just an incredible soft focus,
right.
lens. Now I have something here I can give to you guys here. I'll do it towards the end. There's a good friend of mine that I've communicated with for many years over in Denmark, and he's had lenses that are just amazing. And so what he did on the large format photography forum years ago is he put pictures with the lenses that he shot. So he had the lens, and here's the picture I shot with that lens. And he did several of them. That's probably about 20. So, like I said earlier, I do a lot of research, a lot of reading. The only way I learned about lenses is by just reading and finding what I really liked the look of. And I would see images. I was like, oh my God. And so maybe there would be information in there, what lens was used, or I'd contact the person and ask them. It's like, what the heck is that?
Right. And for the folks in the group, if you have any interest in making large format lenses in general, this particular design is quite simply the easiest to make and build. And if you're interested, I can share the math. There's some really simple math for figuring out where the aperture should be in front of the lens, depending on the size of the aperture. And so if you want to take a crack at it, and they take shockingly sharp images when they're stopped down.
Absolutely.
They take incredibly sharp images. And their bokeh is pretty amazing too, when you just leave them wide open. I have a replica of one of these that I made for my box camera, and it's ridiculously sharp at f32, and it was really easy to make. So if you have any interest at all, you just post up or ping me or whatever, and I can share sort of the recipe, if you will. So
when we spoke briefly last time, I had Carl Struss and the Struss lenses. He was a cinematographer in the 20s, and he developed a lens that a lot of the pictorialists in the late 1800s, early 1900s, or actually say probably 1900s, used his lens, because his lens had a quality that was just unique at that time frame. A lot of people would use Struss's lens. Pinkham & Smith was another lens maker. I've never owned a Pinkham & Smith. I've never owned a Struss. And those were very, very popular lenses in their time, and they're highly collectible today, very expensive as well. But I think I'd mentioned it, I have a good friend of mine who is an optician, and he took the Struss, because he's got 4 Carl Struss lenses. Yeah. And when you find one, it's going to cost you $5,000 to $9,000. Okay, so do the math on that. And my friend has more money than he knows what to do with.
I need to be an optician.
Yeah. So anyhow, he had a friend of his who is a master machinist in Vietnam. This barrel here, this is the Trans signature lens.
I've heard of him. Somebody mentioned him in the group last week.
Yeah, Tree's a good friend of mine. We talk 3-4 times a day. Okay, I got him into building cameras now. So, So anyhow, this lens is all machined. It's not CNC. This is all done by hand by a master machinist, all out of one solid piece. Okay, the only thing that comes off is the whole thing unscrews and comes apart. It's just amazing. But this lens, the lens in this, Tree took the formula for the Karl Stress lens and analyzed it, being an optician, and he was able to actually duplicate the Karl Stress lens and improve upon it in contrast.
So did he have that optical element made for him, or did he just find pre-existing optical elements that match that criteria?
He made the lens himself.
Okay.
Had the lens made. The problem you have when you're making lenses is you're dealing with scientists who talk in scientific terms, opticians talk in different terms, and photographers, photography lenses, you got 3 different languages, all these different languages. Nobody speaks the same language. He was able to get the people that do the lens for him to be able to understand what he was doing, because he understood all the languages, and explain what he wanted. And he got it. And so this was one of the first lenses that came out that he's done, and they're still available. You can order them. They're kind of like made to order. He just wanted to build it so it was a personal project. I bought a lens from him because he's a friend of mine and I supported him, and it wasn't cheap. But the great thing about this lens, this barrel, it's aluminum. It's pretty light. It's a little bit. It's big. It can be a little top heavy on my 8x10, but it's not bad. It has an aperture in it, and the aperture is just marked with Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because you can unscrew this. This will unscrew, and this is actually pretty cool the way that the flange is done on this. Bear with me here while I get this thing off of here. Here's the flange. So the lens covers the screws. It's actually pretty cool. So there's the screws to the board. But once you get it off, then on the back side here, this is the lens housing. This unscrews. This is your single meniscus lens in here.
And it unscrews, and it unscrews. He keeps.
Okay, so this lens housing, you can unscrew this. I have a 18-inch lens in here. Hang on, my house phone starts ringing because it's prank calls. So this is an 18-inch 18-inch component, 18-inch lens. Okay, shut up. Jesus. Okay, so I have a 28-inch lens that I can take out and I can put in this housing and screw it in here, and I can make this lens now a 28-inch focal length. So you've got lenses from 9 inches all the way up to, like, I think 28 or 32 inch in varying focal lengths. So you just change the housing, and so you have, now I've got a lens that'll fit on my 810, or I can use this lens on my 14-17 by putting a 28-inch component on it, and I can stop it down or shoot it wide open. And it's just an amazing lens, very, very much like the Karl Stress lens. You can unscrew this, you can put filters in it, you can actually unscrew the barrel and add a Copal 3 shutter to it as well. So very, very versatile. So this is kind of like a new lens that I've had that I take out and use with me in 810 and 14-17 as well. So there are, people out there making nice soft focus lenses. And, if you look at the comparison, the cost of this lens to a Struss, there's no comparison. This lens is going to cost you about $2,500, but a Struss, if you find one, is going to be at least $5 to 10 grand. So anyhow, so I enjoy using this lens. It's really a nice lens. I haven't used it as much as I want to, but I'm going to use it more in the studio here going forward. but I really like the look of this lens. So so those are some of the basic lenses. I mean, the go-to lens for my 8x10 is the Cooke triple convertible. So I don't know how many people are familiar with the Cooke triple, but you know, so basically, when you have all three, you have 3 focal lengths, and you also have 3 apertures on here. So depending on what you're using, you just turn this dial. It tells you what aperture. You know, you got the aperture for the 19-inch component, or the 312 millimeter, the both lens components, or the single rear component. You just spin this around, it'll give you the aperture. So I bought this from Cooke a few years ago. I just bought the barrel because Cooke will sell you a Copal 3 shutter. Copal doesn't make the shutters anymore, so they bought a bunch of them, and they'll sell you a Copal 3 shutter for $1,500. The lens itself costs about $4,100. So, you know, you're in for a significant investment. And so I bought the barrel, and I bought the Copal 3 shutter. It had a Caltar 375 or some lens in it. I just took out the lenses, and I used the shutter, and I sent it to SK Grimes. Had the lens sent to SK Grimes. They mounted it for me. They did all the apertures, got everything mounted. But this lens is wonderful for me as I get older. I don't want to carry a whole hell of a lot of extra stuff with me. And this weighs a little bit, but it gives me 3 different focal lengths, and I can use it on 3 formats. So,
right.
yeah,
So that's Cooke. That's Cooke Camera, though, right? Is that the same? Just to be clear, the same New York-based photographic company that created the very first Cooke triplet back in the day in 1893.
This is from England.
Oh, okay.
This is Cooke in England, and their main business, I found out, is cinematic lenses.
Oh, I take that back. I was wrong. It is the Cooke was first made in England. I was misreading that.
Cooke is very well known for their cine lenses.
Yeah.
Their cinematic lenses are $700,000-$800,000 a piece. I mean, I was blown away by that cost. You know, but they still make this lens, and they make a 4x5 PS 945 soft focus lens. But you can stop down that soft focus lens, and it's beautifully sharp. This lens at 5.6, I think, or 6.3. Let me see. Never remember. I haven't been out shooting for a while. Yeah, this goes down to 6.8 for the 312 millimeter. But it's just this. I love this lens. It's like my go-to standard lens if I want to shoot something sharp. But it's the cost of admission is quite high. Okay, so I kind of like to work, like I say, in both worlds, and so I've kind of selected lenses that I really like to use, and just take those out and shoot them, and then occasionally I'll pull in one of my other lenses that I haven't shot with in a while. Ross lenses, Dahlmeyer are famous name lenses that people recognize. Dahlmeyers are more expensive if you can find a Ross lens. They're a little more affordable, and I love my Ross lenses that I have because they're just beautiful. But something that's unique that you'll never see anywhere but here.
Anywhere but in Jim's basement.
Anywhere but here. We're going to see this. Okay. So are you guys ready for this one?
Let's do it.
Okay. So a few years ago, again, searching online, I stupidly bought a Kodak commercial Ektar, 14-inch commercial Ektar, but it was just the front and the rear lenses. Okay. No barrel. Okay. No barrel, no shutter. It's just the lens elements. So being that I was working on cameras and all kinds of stuff, I was drilling holes and things, and I thought, I got this crazy idea. It's like, well, I wonder if I can make a barrel for these components I've got. Well, I I'm Mr. Walnut, so I build everything out of walnut. So what I did is I built a walnut barrel, my commercial Ektar. Okay, it's got a Waterhouse slot in it.
I would say it's got a Waterhouse to know, right?
All right.
Did you build that with a single solid piece of wood, or did you use multiple pieces of wood?
Like I was drilling holes out on my this is done with a hole saw. So I laminated 1, 2, 3, 4 rings. Okay, glued them together. I designed the Waterhouse slot, and I cut the slot, you know, in the ring that would be in the right position, I guess. Figured, yeah, that looks good enough. Let's put it there. So how do you thread it? How do you thread the elements to get on here? So I just took my carving knife and I carved some threads in. Okay. And then, okay, well, you want to make sure you get it, you know, it's got to be straight and square and all that. So it was, honestly, it was just luck. I screwed this thing in. I had a friend who gave me the measurements and everything, the lens distance and all that stuff. And I was off by like 0.003 from it being dead on. So I thought, well, shit, that's good enough for me. Now I've used this lens. I made a set of Waterhouse stops that stops down to 64 because the Universal 5 only goes to 45. So I said, well, hell, I want to do better than that. I'm just going to make it to 64. You know, I make a pinhole if I wanted. But the lens works great. I shot a whole series in a abandoned glass factory in the Eastern Sierra years ago. And this is the only lens I took in with me. And it's just, it's amazing. And so the Waterhouse stops, just, I slot them in there and again, cap off, cap on. And so if you're handy and you've got some elements lying around, there's an idea. A bunch of, you know, holes you cut out with different, I mean, I did a big hole saw. I cut it almost all the way through, took the smaller hole saw, cut the diameter I needed on the inside, and then I cut it out. So I was able to create a lens barrel.
But you need to do like a really clean cut. Like you would want to cut the central one, the middle one first, and then the outer one second, so that doesn't tear, right? Yeah. There's definitely an order of operations.
Yeah, and you got to make sure that you because once you cut it out, then how do you hold on to?
Exactly.
There's a step to it, and I can't even remember how I did it, honestly. But it was one of those things. It's like, well, let's just give it a try and see, because I was never able to find a barrel, you know, and I could have found a Universal 5 shutter, I would imagine, over time. But I've had this lens for a long time, and it's the commercial Ektars are really great lenses if you shoot them wide open. I think cars used them for all of his portrait work, and so it's an awesome lens. Occasionally you'll find one for a good price. Most people are asking stupid money for them.
Yeah, they're very famous now. They're a commodity.
Yeah, so I picked one up, many years ago, and ended up making that barrel. So when I go to my 8x20 kit that I take out, I use 3 lenses. I've got something that I learned years ago from a friend. This lens here is my go-to 8x20 lens. Okay, this is a Rodenstock APO Geragon 360. So 14-inch, 360 millimeter. This baby covers my 8x20 wide open at f9. Okay, it's a process lens. But everybody says, oh, you're only supposed to do 1-to-1, all that stuff. This lens I use probably for 90% of the work I've done on my 8x20 is this 360 Geragon. I love the ratio, the aspect ratio. It is wonderfully sharp when I stop it down. I'm generally shooting it. This thing goes down to 64. So I'm usually at 45 to 64 when I use this lens. And it's just amazing. And so, for me being a landscape guy, doesn't have a shutter. I can put a Packard shutter on the back of it because I've got an adapter I built to put on the back here, but I don't really need it because if I'm out at f/64 and I still have some ISO 25 speed 8x20 film with reciprocity and everything, I'm shooting 12 to 30 minutes in the redwoods.
And this is your handmade 8x10, right?
I don't need a shutter. Yeah. It's my handmade 8x20. Yeah. So barrel lenses can be something that are affordable. If you look for an Ilex 15-inch process lens, you can probably find them for like anywhere from $90 to $150. They'll cover 8x20. And I have a good friend of mine who had the was it the Gorse Trigor, 14-inch Trigor that's like $3,000. And he did a side-by-side comparison with the 15-inch Ilex and the Trigor, and he said, "Man, I like the Ilex better than the Trigor." And he sold his Trigor for good money, and uses the Ilex process lens. So if you want something that's got great coverage, and it's from f9 to about f/64 for 810, 11x14, 820 it'll cover. I haven't tried it on the 14-17, but it's an inexpensive lens that will give you a great bang for your buck. And man, does this lens, the sharpness on this is great. And it's got 77 millimeter filter thread. And so all my filters are 77 millimeters. So I use this to say, this is my go-to lens on my 8x20. So then I have, in addition to this, I've got a 450 4M, and then I've got a 21¼ inch Kodak Ectanon process lens. That again, you find either the 21¼ inch Kodak Ectanon or a 21¼ inch Ilex process lens. Those lenses will give you some, great coverage. You're talking 540 millimeter, whatever the conversion is. And they're dirt cheap. They're usually f11, the f128. And they will give you some incredible coverage and beautiful contrast. I've been really happy using that Kodak Ectanon. And I had the Ilex, the 21¼ Ilex for my 11x14 kit that I sold to my friend. And he loves the lens. He said the lens is just amazing. It's lightweight, beautiful, sharp, great contrast. So I generally shoot my 8x20 is all sharp. I don't really shoot any soft focus work with my 8x20. So that's the kit that I use for my 820. And I can use my Cook. I can use the 19 and the 25-inch components of my Cook that'll cover my 8x20 as well. So, so that kind of covers that format. Now, when I get to 14-17, that's where I use the 19 and 24 on my Cook. I've got a 24-inch RTAR and a 30-inch RTAR, which I absolutely love. They're beautiful on that format. And then years ago, I had several brass lenses, like I said, that I sold, but I kept one. This is a New York lens company portrait lens. It's a group portrait lens, and it's 14 by 17 to 16 by 20. So it's a rapid rectilinear portrait lens. So it's f8 to f44, I think. Yeah, f8 to f44. But wide open, it covers 14-17 and 16-20. So it's a lens I could use soft if I wanted to shoot soft. Also, the lens that I have that I got from Tree Tran, I put my 28-inch component on here, and I can shoot this sharp or soft as well. So I've got a plethora of lenses to work from. It just all depends on, how am I visualizing what I want to say in the image I'm taking? Do I want it sharp? Do I want it soft? What am I trying to say with that image? It will determine what lens, that I that I choose. And if I'm going on a long trip, I take quite a few lenses with me so that I've got that, got that option. If I'm photographing local, then I'll usually carry, I'll determine that before I go out. Getting to like, the studio cameras, over here, this is the 1417 tailboard studio camera I built several years ago. This was actually the first 1417 I built. I built 4 1417s, and this is another lens. See if I can get it off of here. That was one of those lenses I found on eBay. This is a Voigtlander Euroscope number 4. I forget the actual focal length that it's supposed to be if it's complete, but this lens only had the rear element. The front was nothing. So I bought it for, I don't know, 60, 70 bucks, whatever it was. And I figured, okay, well, I'll figure out something to do with it. Well, when I put it on my camera, the focal length was like 44 inches or something. It was crazy because it just had the rear.
Right.
So I found, and I can't remember the name of the camera store in Atlanta. It's not KEH. There's a camera store in Atlanta where I bought a +1 diopter for this, which actually threaded into, I had to put some gaffer's tape on the inside and threaded right into the barrel perfectly, and basically turned this into a 20-inch lens. And the glass diopter that I got is an old one. It's from the 60s, I think. And man, it turned this lens into something just absolutely sweet. So I use it on my 1417, both the one I take out in the field and the one in the studio, and it's just an awesome lens. So if you find something that, it's online where you've got just one lens, there's an option. You find it may take some work to get the diameter, and you have to use some step down rings to mount the lens to the front so that you can, use the lens. But, I'm always looking for crazy stuff like that, because it's like, what can I do with it?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. You can take those single element ones or buy one where the front element is messed up, and then you just get the diameter. You take the first element out, and then you get the focal length just by throwing it on your camera, focus to infinity.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can go to the surplus shed or somewhere else and get an equivalent different element in the front. And I've turned some old dead brass lenses into something really interesting that way.
They turn out being really, really wonderful lenses. And again, I can shoot this wide open, or I've got f-stops that I made for it that stop it down, and it's beautiful both ways. I did an 11x14 portrait of a youngest son when he was in college, outside of his dorm, and I made 11x14 contact print and gave it to him, and I was just like blown away. I think I shot it at like f11, and it was just absolutely gorgeous rendition of him, but the background had just a slight swirl to it, just a hint, and it was really, I felt really attractive. So it's something you can keep your eye out for when you're looking for lenses. Is something like that if you don't spend a lot of money on it, maybe you can turn it into something really really cool. The other thing, I've got a lot of people, friends of mine, that have lenses that have elements on the front that are cracked. Okay, you got a crack running through the side, or you got a crack running through the middle, or I've got a good friend of mine, and maybe some of you guys know him, Luther Gerlach. He used to live with me down by me in California when I was living there in Ventura, California, but he's moved back to Connecticut. And Luther's a wet plate expert and does very big plates. But he had, I forget the lens, but it was one of his favorite lenses. And it was a 14-inch, I forget, but the front was like a spider web. I mean, it was cracked all to hell. And he said, I love this lens. Because, the plates that he'd shoot with it, you couldn't tell there was anything wrong with the lens. There may be a little bit of reduce contrast. You don't want to shoot it into bright light where light's, hitting the lens, but we don't want to do that anyhow.
Or do you?
Are you looking for a crazy effect? You can get some crazy effects with it. So, I don't have any cracked lenses, but I sure as heck wouldn't shy away from them if the price was right. I would just like, you know what? Hey, it's cheap. I'll give it a try. Because you never know. You might be really, really surprised at what you get. So, I'm always, I not so much now. I've kind of gotten past my lens buying obsession. I used to go on eBay every morning ritually. It's like, and I would hunt. I would go through old lenses, vintage lenses. I'd put in whatever I could, and I'd find stuff that somebody listed incorrectly. They didn't know what they had, and you just get killer deals. And there's still some of that out there, but I don't think as much as there used to be 10, 15 years ago.
Right. And if you find one that's, again, where the lens is complete junk, you can always use the barrel for your own lenses, or the shutter for your own lenses.
Yeah, if you're not spending a lot of money, then it makes a lot of sense, I feel, to kind of experiment and play with it. And I've spent a lot of money over the years. I've made money, has it equaled out? No, I know I've spent more than I've made, but just the joy of collecting lenses has been really a lot of fun, for me, because they're just amazing. You think about how they made these things. Just, God, they're not like got, computer technology to analyze the glass and all that. These guys were grinding lenses by hand, and they were coming up with just amazing lenses. Now, the oldest lens that I have in the collection is one of my absolute favorites. And let me pull it off. This is another monster. Okay, this is a 15-inch Ross portrait Petzl lens. Okay, and this lens is from 1853. Okay, now I think they started, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think they developed Waterhouse stops in 1858. So this lens is dated to 1853. And when Ross was first starting out, the early Ross lenses, the way you can tell, is it's Rolfs, R-O-L-F-S, was what Ross designated their lenses early on. Okay, and I didn't know that, and I did some research. I found out, oh shit, when I bought this lens, I bought this lens for a decent amount of money, but it's well worth every penny I spent, because this just has a signature look to it that's just incredible. I love this lens. This is one of those lenses that, I'm keeping, and I've sold a lot of really good studio lenses that I've had. I had a 19.5-inch Voigtlander Petzl. It was just amazing lens. And what did I like better? I like this better, so I sold it. But the cool thing about this, when you bought this lens, these are the Waterhouse stops.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the Waterhouse stop. You bought a set of Waterhouse stops. The Waterhouses, they go in the lens barrel. Okay, so here's your Waterhouse stop. It slides in here. I've got to line it up right. But you got to figure this lens is what, 100 and whatever years old? But so you slide this in, that's your Waterhouse stop. So this is F4. This is, I'm figuring about F8 or whatever. I haven't really calculated it. I figure it's about F8. So they had a set of Waterhouse stops that you could get for this lens. I wish I had the whole set just so I could have it, because it's an awesome lens for the collection. So this is kind of like a go-to studio lens that I have. This is on a 10-inch lens board, for my Century. So it's a big lens. Let me set it down and all. The other studio lens that I have, and it's kind of something that's not really well known. but this is just a phenomenal. Wow. This is a Puyo Pullini in combination with Darlow. And they call it a truce lens, a truce or truce. I'm not sure how you say it. Trousse. And it's some special design. I've read about it, and it's just a special thing that they came out with. But I shoot this thing wide open at f4, and there's a Waterhouse slot for it, but I don't have anything that I've made. But what this lens gives me more than any of my other lenses is a three-dimensional rendering of the subject. I've done mainly still lifes with this. It gives a unique roundness and rendering to where the subject kind of stands out from the background more so than any of my other lenses. It's just got a really unique signature to it that I absolutely love. So going forward, it's a lens that I want to use for doing portrait work because it seems to separate the subject from the background a little bit more than my other lenses. So over the years, I've learned the characteristics of the lenses, and you just kind of find your favorites, and then that's what you end up keeping. So this lens is just
or macro.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
now we've watched Joby, like that three-dimensional rendering. I mean, you'd have to have a camera the size of a football field, but
this is a 12-inch.
Oh, okay.
300 millimeter. So I could do macro with this.
All right.
Yeah, but how much does that weigh?
I would say this is probably, with the Packard shutter and everything on it, this is probably weighing about 5 pounds, maybe.
Oh, well, that's not bad.
Oh. I'd have to weigh it to be sure, and so it's not super heavy.
You could take that in the field.
Yeah, but the lens board again is 10 inches, so it's like I'm not rolling my studio camera. I don't even want to roll it out in the backyard. But it's it's an awesome studio lens. So I just kind of kept it to 3 lenses for the studio camera, but I've got a reducing board to where I can use any of the other lenses I have on the studio camera. So I've got backs for my studio camera that go from 11x14 down to 4x5. Okay, and it's got, I think, about 44 inches of bellows draw. So, Joby was talking about macro. Yeah, I've done some, I didn't think about it at the time. It's probably macro, mainly of flowers and a single rose or something and right in close. So I'm focusing on a petal or two that's sharp, and then the rest is pretty diffused. And I usually shoot them stop down in one stop, and I haven't tried anything with stopping it way down, because then you're talking a real long exposure. But when I do that, I shoot mainly X-ray film because it's cheap. You can develop it quickly, and you can get results real quick and find out where you screwed up and go back and and reshoot it, and it doesn't cost you a lot, just mainly time more than anything else. Now, some of the lenses that I've sold over the years that I kind of regret selling, a lens that, if you can find it, is really versatile is the Kodak 305 portrait lens. It's a meniscus. It's got a front-mounted ILX 5 shutter, the universal 5 shutter that Kodak uses, and it's just a beautiful lens. But when I was downsizing, I had to determine, do I stay with that universal 5 Kodak, or do I keep my Ideoscope that's like half the size? And it was really a tough decision to sell that lens, because it's there. If you can find one, I've looked on eBay. They're stupid. People are asking stupid money for them because the lens market's soft right now. If somebody's realistic, you can pick one up for $700-800. But they're all trying to get $1,400-1,500 for them, $1,100. It's stupid money. But it's a beautiful lens. wide, just down from wide open and sharp. It's a versatile lens. It's the standard focal length on 8x10. They say it really is a 5x7 lens, but that's bullshit. I used it on my 8x10 all the time. It covers beautifully. There's no fall off in the corners. It's an awesome soft focus lens or a sharp lens. The other lens that I really, I was on the fence when I sold it, is one that's pretty rare. You don't hear about it too much. And that, geez, I just went brain dead here. Hang on a minute. let me look at my notes. I had a 16 to 18 inch graph variable lens. Now the graph variable is similar to the universal Heliar in the way that it works. You can at 16 inch focal length, it's an f3.8. At 18 inch, it's an f4.5. But you have a continual variable soft focus feature that you can turn the dial and infinitely vary the soft focus. So you can even stop the lens down with the aperture and add in diffusion to a sharp image. So it's very, very versatile. Now, I use the lens in the studio mainly, but I use it out in the field. The only thing is the lens weighed almost 6 pounds, and that's in the barrel. And the diameter of the thing is just barely fit on a 6-inch lens board. There wasn't much room to spare. But man, was it a beautiful lens. It was something that, that again, had just a really wonderful characteristic. But I had a printout that I got online that told you how to use the lens, because you had to learn how to focus it. You had to learn how to see the lens, because it was, you look on the ground glass and you're like, what the hell? I can't see nothing sharp. You can't figure out anything. It took some time to learn how to use the lens. And I still have the printout that explains how the lens is used. And so they made a 14 to 16 inch version. They made the 16 to 18, and they made an 18 to 20, I think 18 to 20 or 18 to 22 inch focal length as well. And then several ones, down. But they're kind of a rare lens. They come up once in a while, and they're just it's an amazing soft focus and sharp as well, because it would stop down to 32 and give you just an incredible incredible image. But it's very complex in its lens design, multiple elements, and it's just, I looked at the schematic of it and I'm like, holy shit. What the heck is this? It's just, so whoever created it did an amazing job. I mean, I spoke about that 19-inch Voigtlander. Voigtlander makes incredible pitfalls, and they're expensive. Same with Dahlmeyer. The brand names are you're going to get a great lens if you find one in good condition, and they're going to be expensive. People ask me all the time, well, how can I find a lens for this format? I get the question is like, well, yeah, I'm looking for a 600 millimeter brass Petzval, so I can shoot 14-17 or 16-20 or 20x24 wet plate. Okay, well, good luck. Okay, so because you're gonna have to invest some serious money. Okay, a 19-inch Voigtlander Petzval, it's going to cost you $5 to $7 grand. If you find one, less than that, it's great. But I've seen people sell lenses. My friend Tree has got lenses he sold over the years for $12,000 to $15,000 that are, Her Majesty's 24-inch Petzvals. So anytime you get a long focal length Petzval, it's going to bring big bucks. And
I am working on it.
It's tough. It's tough to find, and they're going to cost, because lenses like that, it's what the market will bear. You can offer that lens for what you think is a stupid price, but if somebody's really looking for that lens, they'll pay whatever they're willing to pay for it. And I've held on to lenses because, hey, I know this lens is an amazing lens. Somebody's going to want it for the price I'm offering it.
Right.
And that's, you know, there's photographers out there who like really want to have that particular look of that lens, and they're going to be willing to pay for it as much as it hurts.
Jim,
So,
you had a large Cook portrait too, didn't you?
I had an 18-inch Cook. I had an 18-inch Verito as well. The Cook is just, you know, anybody that shoots with a Cook knows the Cook look. I mean, it's very, they have creamy rendition to their out of focus area. It's just a creamy rendition overall. It's very noticeable. I look at a lot of images. I like to look at various images, and if they put information on there, what lens was used, you know, it goes up in here. I just remember it, and then you look for, you know, something that you like. Try to find a lens that you can find that's going to give you that look. Okay, I like the way this Cook looks. Heck, I'm going to try to find one. Now, you don't need to, you know, an 18-inch Cook, you know, is a pretty big, pretty heavy lens. And it's the knuckler, so it's got, you know, the diffused ring that you can adjust, you know, adjust your diffusion. But it's a big lens, and it's really, you know, kind of designed for a studio. But, you know, you find a 13-inch Cook or a 15. I had a 15-inch Cook as well. I had a 15-inch knuckler, and I had an 18-inch knuckler, and I sold them both.
Yeah, I've got the 15, and it weighs easily 10 pounds. I was amazed to think there was something larger than that.
Yeah. Well, the 18 is the biggest that they officially made. Now, Cook made one, and I happen to have my portrait done with it, and I actually shot with the lens. Cook made one 27-inch portrait lens. And my friend Tree Tran had the lens. It was a famous photographer of one of Edward Weston's friends, had Cook make him a 27-inch f4 portrait lens, knuckler. Okay, it's the only one that Cook ever made. The provenance was with the lens. The whole story of how the lens was made and everything. The lens went from Edward Weston's friend to someone else. It went to a friend of Tree's down in, I think in Costa Mesa or Huntington Beach, somewhere in Orange County, California. Had it for years. And Tree finally was able to buy the lens many years ago. The lens weighs 45 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. The diameter of the thing is like, it's like 9 or 10 inches, 12 inches in diameter. It's huge.
What format was he shooting that on?
11 by 14.
That small.
Yeah. So
Sure.
it was on the 11 by 14 Century studio camera, like I have it in the back, but he had to reinforce the front standard of the studio camera so that it would hold it because it was so darn heavy. But I have a platinum print that he did my portrait with that lens, and then I shot a portrait as well with that lens. And you talk about something that's got that dreamy quality. My God, that thing was just amazing. But he sold that lens several years ago for $45,000. Again,
so $1,000 a pound.
The only one of its kind with provenance. And he sold it to a famous photographer in Paris who died like 2 or 3 years later. I think it's kind of circulating around again. And he may end up buying it back at some point. But
so it's over $1,000 a pound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Actually,
no, there's a lot of wonderful glass out there. There's even bigger stuff than that. You know?
I was gonna say this might be a good spot to pause for a moment and see. Does anybody have any questions for Jim, since he's gone through a lot of really awesome stuff, and I think this is a good place to see whether or not there's any. Then Joby's like,
Just a quick question. You said you developed your film by inspection. Is that your X-ray film, or?
I do it all. I do it all by.
How are you, like in really dim light, or in green light, or with a?
In green light
goggles, or what?
Yeah, what I tried those infrared things, and that just made me dizzy and crazy. I sold them. early on, before I got into carbon printing, I was a follower of Michael Smith on the Azo forum, and I printed on Azo and loved it. And I learned how to develop by inspection by reading his articles and following, and it made sense to me. So I started out with 8x10 dip and dunk. I do 4 sheets at a time in gallon tank, and so I could pull it out, and I had a foot switch with the green safe light. And so what you do is you calculate, okay, what's your approximate development time? I develop all my film in PyroCat HD. So generally, I will vary the dilutions if I'm going to do a minimal agitation. But generally, because I print carbon, I want a stout negative. So I'm usually doing 2-100. And depending on the film, it can go anywhere from 8 minutes to 14 to 16 minutes, depending on film and what density I'm looking for. So I'll figure, okay, so let's say I got 8 minutes. Well, if I'm 6 minutes in, after one of the agitation cycles, I'll flip the foot switch on. The green light comes on. I'll pull it out of the tank and I'll look at it. I was like, okay, it's getting there, or it looks pretty good. It's really hard to judge, actually. It takes a lot of film developing to really get it to where, you know, you're not underdeveloping it. Or in my case, I overdevelop a lot of stuff, and then I got to print through all that density. But so I like doing that because there's some negatives. My exposures can be all over the place because I shoot old expired film. You know, 90% of what I shoot is old expired film. It's either, I got Burger 200 from 2006 that I shoot. Okay, so I got to develop that, and there's a lot of base fog, so it's hard to see that when you're developing it. And so I like to develop by inspection, and I use the pyro for the alternative process that I'm doing, and you know, it seems to work so far.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Thanks for the lead, Eric.
Yeah. I was curious because I've obviously developed by inspection with orthochromatic film underneath the red safe light, but
well, yeah, see,
you know,
with X-ray film,
yeah,
the red safe light on.
You do it all day long, but I was like, wait, green safe light? Hold on, I need to look at this.
Yeah, and you can load the film in your film holders with the red safe light on. So how do you scrap the film? I'm still kind of trying to get my head around that.
I'm a heathen, Jim. I'm a heathen. I'm a ham-fisted heathen. You should see the lenses I make. I'm a caveman with a stick.
I'm gonna cram this shit in, go to work, you know?
Caveman with stick.
Something people don't realize is that film, once it's almost at the end of its development, really isn't all that light sensitive anymore. So inspecting it like that, probably, you know, minimal chance of any damage at all and trying to look at it.
Yeah, and so it made sense. I've never had any formal training. I've just learned by reading a lot, watching a lot of stuff, and looking at images, and then taking information that you get online from people that seem like they have, you know, they have the background that I can rely on. They know what they're doing. And then you got people in there, you got to kind of weed through the crap because they're talking bullshit, you know, and you know, find out who makes the most sense for you. And so Michael's development process, I'd never heard of it before. And I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. You know, if you got 4 different negatives and they're all different exposures, how do you determine the time of development? If they're all different, if, you know, you're looking at a tank and you pull them out, you can kind of see what's going on. Oh, well, heck, this one's, you know, needs more. This one, you know, you got +1, you got, you know, -1, all in the same tank. And you just pull them out and look at them and you can develop them all at the same time. It just kind of made sense. So I tried it and I just stuck with it. So, you know, in the sheet film, I just do one at a time in a tray. And, you know, that's kind of just, you know, that works really well also.
Cool. Who else has questions for Jim or comments? I see an unmuted mic, but I don't hear your voice, my friend. Hold on. He's having too much fun with the app. He can't get his mic to work.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm not going anywhere.
Come on, Ethan. You can do it.
Maybe.
Hey, there you go. We got you.
Okay, I had the mic muted. Hey, Jim, I know we've been talking lenses forever and ever, but
yeah,
see some of those cameras.
Yes. Oh, cameras? Yeah.
Ethan, I love you.
Well, like I said, I got the studio camera in the back. That's a Century 8A. Great camera. It's on the Centennial stand, and it elevates up and down. It tilts. It's an awesome piece of equipment to use, and I picked it up years ago for a couple $100, which was just crazy. And then over here, the other camera here, this was the first 14-17 I built, and I dedicated it to the studio because it really wasn't functional for out in the field. And so I've built 2 8x10s. I built one 11x14. I've built 4 14-17s.
4.
I built 2 8x20s. And I'm currently building a third 8x10 that's on the bench behind me. That is the last 2 8x10s I built are replicas, or no, I shouldn't say replicas, but they're inspired by the Ebony SW 810.
Okay.
It's a pretty complicated camera. I had the wonderful opportunity to build the back and the ground glass frame for a friend of mine who bought this Ebony camera. And in having it in my shop for several weeks, I started playing around with it, and I thought, my God, I love the way this works. It's just so amazing. I figured, well, heck, I want to build one myself. So I did. And the metal that's required for that camera, and I'm not without the clips for the ground glass and the lens board clips and everything. There's 37 pieces of metal that needs to be fabricated for that camera. It's got asymmetric tilts. You can shoot a 600 millimeter lens with this thing, and you can shoot a wide angle, whatever the 150 Super Cymar or whatever that covers 8x10, you can shoot it with this camera without doing anything except racking it in and out. And it's an amazing camera. So I built one for myself out of walnut about 2 years ago, I guess, maybe now. And it's amazing, but the difficulty of building it was just incredible because the metal pieces, the rear bracket is a curved rear bracket, and then you have the slot in the middle of it. So when the camera folds, you've got this bracket that you gotta cut. In fact, I'll show you some of the pieces what I'm talking about.
I want to know if you did it with a cutting jig or a rotary axis or a CNC mill.
Now I have a mini mill. I have a mini mill. The first camera that I built was done with my mini mill. Okay, and I'm no machine. I'm a decent woodworker, but machining aluminum, even though aluminum's soft, I've got a mini mill, and I was able to cut this radius, and then you got to cut this radius in the middle, and then you got to step it down. You can't cut all the way through. You got to work it down. You got to smooth the edge. It's just took forever. So the camera I'm working on now, this is water jet cut.
Yeah.
Portland water jet. Here, I live in Vancouver, Washington. Well, Portland water jet cut these for me. I had them cut sets for 5 cameras. So I have enough for 5 cameras. I just got these back from the anodizer.
So you just supply them with the designs and they just cut it?
Yeah, they cut. Now they can't cut any of the L brackets or any of that kind of stuff. But they can cut just flat stock. But I tell you, I got, it took them all of about less than 30 minutes to cut parts for 5 cameras. So if somebody's building cameras, find a water jet cutter. I mean, it was so inexpensive. I was blown away how inexpensive this was. They cut all 5 sets for $216.
Okay, Jim, I got a suggestion. I don't know if you're familiar with Osh Park. They make like circuit boards. You can send them circuit board files, and they'll fab them and send them out.
No,
but the last year they've started Osh Cut, OSH Cut. I think they're actually out of Portland or somewhere in Oregon.
Really?
You can just send them design files, and they will fiber laser or water jet cut metal parts.
Really?
I've been using it a little bit, not for cameras, but
yeah,
other things.
Yeah, the guys at Portland Waterjet were, they do a lot of artistic stuff. They cut things for artists and do some interesting things. And I just found them by, looking on Google, and went down and met with them. And I don't know how to do CAD designs or 3D designs, any of that kind of stuff. So I just basically did tracings. I took my camera apart and I did tracings and said, well, this is exactly what I need. So, but I need it cleaned up. The edges are not absolutely perfect. So they made all the pieces, but there's 37 pieces that go into one camera. There's a lot of fabrication that's required. And then, the wood I can do. I'm, like I said, a decent woodworker, so I can get that all done. So they've made my life a lot easier because, trying to do this one piece would take me like a day and a half, or all day, to cut this, because invariably I'm going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to work a mini mill, turning the X and Y axis at the same time and rotate it to this angle, manually. It's like, I got it done. It actually came out pretty decent. And then I filed it, thoroughly and got it to where it was really, really better than I thought I could do it. So it can be done. I mean, the first camera that I built, my 8x20 first iteration, I built with my dovetail saw, a Dremel, a palm sander, and a couple other hand tools. And it took me 18 months to build it. But I was able to do it, and I did it in my apartment. I was living in an apartment. I had nowhere to cut wood. I just cut it in my apartment. What the hell? And so I built cameras in my apartment, several of them actually. And I remember I had to use a router on one piece, the camera I was building, and I put plastic and stuff up in the hallway. I closed all the doors, and I waited till it was like midday, and I turned my router on. It was like, and I had the shop back on to vacuum up as much dust as I could. Had mask and,
You weren't married at the time, were you?
No. And so, once the dust cleared, I vacuumed it all up. I just needed to route a channel, but it was the only way I could do it was to route this channel. And I had nowhere to go, so I just did it in the hallway of my apartment.
Do you still have that camera? Can I see that camera? I mean, my love for panoramics is well established from the podcast, and my inability to actually make panoramic cameras is also well established. And the whole 8x20 format is a very lustful dream for me personally. Can't speak for anybody else, but
oh, it was right here.
You built it to brilliantly look like a suitcase. Well done, sir.
Well, this is one of those, it's like, hey, what are you going to put it in? Well, this is like one of those rolling cases. It's great. I go out on a trail, I just roll this thing along with me. But yeah, I'll pull it out.
I've totally derailed this into what I wanted to derail it into, cameras. Sorry, gentlemen. You can get back to lenses in a minute.
Well, this is the large format photography podcast, right? Not the classic lenses podcast.
Well, yes, but we have a certain amount of cross-pollination.
Well, I like my panoramic cameras too, so I'm more than happy to be doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, great cap there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think people can't quite read exactly what it says. So
yeah, I had to pin it just to make sure I was reading it right. I was like, wait, hold on.
Okay, so
oh, look at that beast.
It's hard to do while it's sitting on my lap and my tripod somewhere else, so I'll just kind of try to hold this here. Bear with me a second.
This might be one of those moments where I swear again. Holy hell balls, Jim.
It actually doesn't weigh very much.
Well, yeah, it's all bellows.
Yeah.
Where did you get the bellows?
I need to redo the bellows because the bellows was done by a bellows maker in California just as he was getting out of making bellows. So it's kind of losing its shape. The stiffeners, you know, are not holding up. And what I did a few years ago is I rebuilt this camera. This is actually the front standard is from the original camera, the first camera that I built. And then I took and redesigned it. The base I redesigned around the Philips Chamonix design. And so let me get this kind of just out of the way and I can hold it up. But I love this format. So I absolutely love 820. And so you can see here where my hand is. This is the Chamonix design, and it's kind of like a T-bed. Okay, here's the back. It takes up a little bit of real estate. That's the original back that I built, and the springs are all out of brass.
Wow.
So, and so this thing will extend out and handle whatever lens I want to put on it. But it's not a real heavy camera.
I'm sure the tripod to carry it's got to weigh like 30 pounds, but the camera doesn't weigh much.
Well, I had a Reese tripod that I sold because it was just too heavy. I use a carbon fiber tripod. It is actually worked quite well with this and with my 14-17. But you know, this only weighs probably, I can't remember, it's probably about 15 pounds, maybe less than that. My 14-17 weighs 21 pounds. And the first one I built was 32. So years ago I said, I love 14-17, but man, I'm not getting any younger, so I need to make this thing lighter. So I redesigned it and I built it, and I reduced the weight, you know, from 32 down to 21. I knocked 11 pounds off of it, and it's more stable than the other one. So it's just it's phenomenal. But I've used the Philips Chamonix design, you know, for these cameras because you know your focusing is at the back. If you're familiar with their design, the focusing knob is right here, so you can focus from the back. And same on my 14-17. You know, and then my 8x10, I like the traditional knobs, you know, to focus with. So because, you know, my arms are long enough to reach. Whereas with this, if you had a knob at the front to try to focus it, you know, you got to have really long arms or you're going back and forth, which, you know, I've done. But so anyhow, so this was the first thing. They're all hand built. You know, now I've got a wood shop in the garage where I'm able to cut wood, and you know, do all the stuff, you know, much more precise than I did, you know, on the first camera. But there's a lot that goes into building cameras, and every camera that you build, even though you've built so many cameras, you're always learning something new,
right.
Or your step, even if you make really good notes, you're forgetting a step. And it's like, oh shit, I got to redo this piece because you cut something wrong. So, so anyhow, so this is, I love this format. This is great. And, you know, you can still get film for this. Everybody says, oh, you got to order film from Ilford. Well, that's true. But I've been shooting the Shanghai GP3 100 speed film. I got some in 14-17 and I'm really happy with it. The quality of it, and it develops nice in pyro, and I've made some nice carbon prints in 14-17 with that film. And it's available in 820. A 10 sheet box is $41 for ultra large format film. That's not bad. So,
yeah, not at all. The Shanghai stuff has been interesting because a lot of people will have mixed results with it, but I feel like their quality control's theoretically gotten better over the last few years.
Yeah.
Although I've tended to go with the Arista EDU, which is just rebranded.
Yeah.
I remember one of the Eastern European makers. It's just rebranded that, and that's a really affordable 4x5 film that gets down into like that $1 per sheet range.
Here's the 8x10 I'm working on. Okay, I dovetail all the corners and everything. And here's the bellows with the bellows frame. So it's in the waiting for. I had a few pieces of anodized aluminum they needed to redo. So for that to come back, and then I can get into the assembly stage. But I'd have to pick the whole table up and bring it over here. So it's got its own table with all kinds of stuff on it. But so I'll have that done probably, another couple of weeks, and then I'll be working on 2 that I'm going to build out of cherry and another one out of walnut, and maybe another one out of mahogany.
Nice. So does anybody else have any questions for Jim now that I've taken the last 10 minutes over? Because I think we've been going since 11-ish. We're hitting our 3-hour mark. It feels like a good space for everybody to go back to their respective significant others, like mine, who's waiting for me to do chores.
Yep.
Which is a good thing for me to do, by the way. I'm not begrudging her.
Mine,
Hello, dear.
Been gone forever. So if anybody has questions in the future, you can always send me, like an email, or contact me through Facebook, whatever, for either, camera building, lenses, if you got something you want to know about, or carbon printing, is the other thing. Because I'm constantly, printing carbon and, actually even working on another book that I'm doing out of with original carbon prints in them as well. So I've kept myself busy during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, Jim, it's been absolutely fantastic to hear you there, and I'm so glad we made time to talk about cameras. Because they were absolutely fascinating too. And I'm just going to say we've Joby had to go about 5 minutes ago, so we didn't really get another chance to say thanks to Joby. And again, it's the second time we've done one of these gatherings, and Joby's contribution, not just from a talking point of view, but just contribution from some of the questions he gives has been excellent. So you're not here, Joby. Perhaps you might see this on YouTube later, but thank you again. I think it's fair to say I think this we're just going to keep this as a YouTube thing, because there's so much there's so many visuals that have gone on in this. We'll just keep it as a YouTube thing, which also will be up on our YouTube channel.
Hey Simon, you should start to stream to Twitch and Facebook at the same time. We could have a conversation about that.
I think so, because I mean this is I say it's the second time we've done this, and I think it's a great format for having this very open, relaxed conversation. And the whole idea with the first gathering was because we were going to have a gathering in reality in some woods in the UK, with a couple of people talking, having drinks, and just having a chat and just spending time. And I think that vibe is exactly what we've pretty much got here. It's been very relaxed. And we will keep on doing this, and I will have a chat with you, Ethan, about other methods of getting this out there, because I know that some people cannot do Google Meet, and so if we can actually stream across multiple platforms and things like that, that'd be incredible. So yes, we will definitely look at that. But Jim, unfortunately we didn't give Joby the chance to do this, but where can people find your work, and the kind of things, how to get in touch with you?
JimsCarbonArtPhotography.com is the website. I have a show up on Artsy right now, where you can see several pieces and actually some photographs of the books. The books are well represented on the website, but pricing and everything is on the Artsy site. And that's, I'm represented on Artsy by Veritas Editions. They're running a show for me that runs through, I think, the 22nd of December. I'm I'm the featured artist for this first gallery show that he's putting on. And so we're getting some questions and stuff. Haven't sold anything, but it's nice. I'll get some worldwide exposure to some of the work that I do. So take a look at that. Like I said, there's pricing on there. You can see the pricing of the books.
Yeah, the books are stunning, by the way. I mean,
thank you.
The
books are a dream come true. You know, that's the dream that I thought would never happen, and it did. So I'm really thankful that I was able to complete that project, and it's just morphed into other projects. For me as a carbon transfer artist, it's just the only way I can present my work in book form. So I'm trying to find somebody who can do trade press work editions and do justice to the carbon prints that I have. So that's something going forward I'm going to try to work on so that I can make the books more affordable, you know, in a different printed format. But I'm such a control freak. It's really a tough one to let go of. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes in the future.
Brilliant. Eric, have you got any closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, I always have thoughts, but I would say thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Jim and Joby, also for agreeing to take some time and speak and everything. And I think this was an absolute blast. I really enjoyed putting faces to names and names to faces, and also getting some snark live from folks. So I always appreciate that. Someday we'll actually see Simon's face past the eye of Simon, and you know, I look forward to that too.
I'm really digging that S that vibrates when you talk.
I know, it's like the eye of Sauron, but different.
It's so cool. Yeah, I have one thing that I want to mention. We were talking earlier, you know, about lenses. My friend Emil Schilt, who is on the large format photography forum. Okay, if you go into the lenses section on the forum, he posted a thread called Lenses and Their Personality. And I'd highly recommend, if anybody's looking at lenses and what they look like, you know, when they're used, he has, I'm guessing, about 20 photographs on there that were shot with various lenses. And you can kind of get an idea of how a lens looks. And his imagery is just spectacular. So I'd highly recommend, you know, looking at that thread on the large format photography forum. It'd be worthwhile to kind of whet your appetite for, you know, for lenses. And they're mainly soft focus lenses. And then there's multiple posts on there for meniscus lenses, for, you know, soft focus landscapes. I've got work on there. So it's a good resource. And that's how I learned about, you know, some of these lenses. So I'd highly recommend that if it helps people out.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank everybody that's attended today and made it all the way through, because we've been on for quite some time.
Troopers.
So well done, and well done for those people that couldn't get quite all the way through, but we enjoyed your contribution as well. So that's great. So that is the end of our second LFPP gathering. And certainly it will be our last of 2020. That's for certain. I said originally we're going to try and do these once a quarter. If we can, we will, but we'll at least try and do 3 times a year. And who knows? You know, at some point we will be able to do something like this in reality, although of course it's going to be in the UK, I suppose, unless Eric wants to hold his own mini one over in the States somewhere.
Maybe, or I can just come to the UK. I would like
that would be far simpler, definitely. In fact, all of you, everyone, come over to the UK and join myself and Ian, who's in the UK as well. I guess we should say thank you to our co-host that couldn't be with us, who's having a great time now, I hope.
Bow, chicka, bow.
Yes. Andrew, sorry, it's a shame you couldn't be with us tonight. Hopefully next time you will. And so that's it. So let's wind things up. Thank you all for coming along. Thanks to our two excellent speakers, and it's been absolutely great having you all. So goodbye until next time. Bye-bye.
Salute.
Say la vie, everybody. Thank you.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.